to the Senate Podcast. Today I'm joined, as always, by the General of the 501st. I couldn't think of another nickname.
No, I like that. I think
Caleb
that fits.
Johnston. How's it going, dude?
It's going great. I do. I love that. I love that intro because the 501st is my favorite. I like a lot of the different divisions and whatnot of the clones and stuff. But the 501st is so cool, man. I really like the Coruscant Guard and the 501st. Those two are just like classics. But yeah, man. Like I said last episode, hopefully everyone can go check that out. That was our Star Wars Day special episode for February the 7th. If you want to learn more about that, just go watch that, or just go to the hashtag Star Wars Day podcast or Star Wars Podcast Day. But at least we're doing some Star Wars podcasts because these are my favorite. So I've been doing pretty good watching Star Wars movies, getting back into Star Wars content, and I love it. Star Wars is so much fun.
Yeah, for sure, dude. So so we are back on our retrospective of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. We've done the original trilogy and prequel trilogy. Check those out. Those were a lot of fun to talk about. And this episode is going to be a doozy because
before we get started, I do want to say something. We, like you said, we did the original and the prequels. So my favorite and most anticipated retrospective was episode 3, but I think this is my second most anticipated episode. Would be the one we're doing today. I'll let you say it. But also you're hosting it, which I think makes a lot of sense. And you hosted the Force Awakens, and I think you did an amazing job hosting the Force Awakens. So I'm excited for one to do this retrospective, and two for you to host, because for people that don't do podcasts and they just listen, when you're the host, you have to do everything. Like, you control the pacing essentially.
Yeah.
The guest or the co-host or whatever kind of just replies and plays off of the host. So it was a lot of fun to be in that co-host seat because I could think about my responses a lot more, and I feel like my analysis were just so much better because I could just think. And your hosting was great, so I think this is going to be a very fun episode.
Oh yeah, well, I just want to give everybody a glimpse into the gravity of this situation. So, except for Revenge of the Sith, I'd say for all the episodes you hosted, all those, I didn't take a ton of notes. Like, I rewatched the movies, took like a few pages of notes. For Revenge of the Sith, I think I had like 5 pages because there's a lot to talk about in the movie. In that movie, there's a lot going on. For Force Awakens, I didn't really take that much. For this, the Star Wars Holiday Special, right? Oh no, that's not what we're talking about today. No, it's The Last Jedi, baby. Everyone's favorite Star Wars movie. I think
we're
that's
finally
safe to
here.
Say. I took 11 pages of notes, and I think he has like 9.
I have 9. Yep.
This is gonna be a disaster. Why are we doing this?
This is gonna be crazy. But we're here.
I'm gonna have to hibernate for I'm gonna have to take a week off of work and just sleep and play video games. Good God.
So I don't know how long it took you to finish it, but it took me about 2 weeks to do this. So it took me about 2 weeks because I was just kept pausing the movie. I wanted to make sure I wrote down literally all of my thoughts. Yeah. So this is probably our most in-depth video we're ever gonna we've made up to this point. Actually, I think Revenge of the Sith is more in-depth than this, but this one is up there with it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So okay, with the sequel trilogy, I wanted to kind of structure the episodes like a remedy game, meaning there are multiple plot lines stacked on top of each other. So there's obviously the general plot line of us doing a retrospective of all the movies, but I also with the Force Awakens, because that was, in my opinion, the most hype I've ever seen for anything ever. Like, the hype for that movie was insane. We may never get anything like that ever again, because Infinity War and Endgame are done, and the hype towards like the MCU and stuff isn't that big, and the same with Star Wars. So we may never get anything like that again. So I wanted to talk about it. So before we start talking about the actual movie, real quick, I just wanted to get our kind of journeys, like after the Force Awakens, where we were, what we thought of it, leading into this. I'm gonna start first because I don't remember seeing any trailers for this movie, which is weird. Like I've seen like other people react to the trailers and stuff, but like I don't remember actually sitting down to watch a trailer for this. So for me, like the only stuff leading into it was like some of the fan theories I've seen, regarding Rey and Kylo Ren. Some that I can remember off the top of my head are Kylo Ren, because when he says to Han, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Some people were like, maybe he's like a double agent, and like that was him saying like, I don't know if I have the strength to fully commit to this, and then like he had to kill Han in order to like totally buy into being like a spy for the First Order. And then there were some like weird Rey theories, like she's Luke's daughter, she's Obi-Wan's daughter, granddaughter, whatever, which I think was kind of a plan. We'll talk about that when we get to Rise of Skywalker. But Rey was the reincarnation of Anakin, which sounds interesting, but I think would have been terrible. So I'm
I
glad
agree.
that Star Wars writers aren't writing these movies, because oh man. So yeah, for me going, I was just excited to see, like how much more, self-actualized, the characters were going to be, what was going to happen with Finn, because he's hurt, what roles he going to play in this movie, how they're going to incorporate Luke. Is he going to reunite with Leia? All this stuff. So my theories and anticipations weren't a lot, because I kind of missed on the marketing of this. So real quick, I'm going to turn it over to you. After the Force Awakens, where was your mindset at? What did you want to see in The Last Jedi? And if you have, had any specific like theories in your mind, what were they, and were you hoping to see any of them actually come to life in the story?
Yeah. So I do remember the trailers vividly. And this is a point in time where theories really blew up, like you
Yeah.
were saying. One of the huge theories was, who is Snoke? Because
Yeah, there were a lot of.
yeah, you had Kylo as an antagonist, but you need that Emperor figure, and obviously they kind of just tease Snoke a little bit in The Force Awakens, similar to the Emperor in the originals. But the big theories out there were, who is Snoke? Is he Plagueis? Is he Palpatine? Is he something else? So I just remember really the theory of who Snoke is was very intriguing to me, and then also who Rey was. And I think one of the ones that I believed was she was somehow related to Obi-Wan. Like she was, we found out that whatever, she was
I
Obi-Wan's
think some
granddaughter
people
or
were saying
something like
that
that.
because he's one of the people that speaks in her
Yeah,
vision. So some
that
people are like, well,
kind of
why would
makes
that be the
sense. Yeah,
case?
yeah. I'm glad they didn't go that route, but yeah, there were just a lot of theories, and uh, it was fun to theorize at that time because, obviously pre The Last Jedi, nobody knew what was, nobody would have thought that the future of Star Wars would have looked like this after The Last Jedi. So it was a very interesting time, 2016 and 2017, post The Force Awakens. So, yeah, it was a interesting time.
Yeah, I'm gonna touch upon fan theories a little bit later in this episode because they're actually relevant, which might not. People might be wondering what I'm talking about, but you know,
I
you'll
think
see.
The Last Jedi doesn't answer a lot of the fan theories anyway, so it kind
Well,
of
I'll just
leaves
bring
it
it
up
up
for debate.
like because there's this like Ryan Johnson haters like to bring up this picture of him wearing a shirt that says "Your Snoke theory sucks," and
Yeah,
it's like, oh, he doesn't have respect for the fans, and it's like I don't. I mean, maybe I think he might have been like a little antagonistic, a little bit at times. You know, that's never great. But like a lot of those Snoke theories were terrible. Like
They were.
he was Darth Plagueis. He was. I think I saw one that like he was like Anakin's corpse or so, like some weird shit. Like
There were some bad theories, yeah.
just go take a nap. Okay, what do you think? Okay, so um, theories, speculation, intrigue.
Yes.
Was the wait worth it? Was it satisfying? Well, let's get into it. I'm gonna take a quick drink break, and then we are gonna dive into this. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go.
Okay. Obviously, with every Star Wars mainline movie, opening crawl.
Yes.
The opening crawl for this movie is nothing special, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, you know, it's perfectly standard, you know, like it sets up the tone, you know, the First Order is going after the Resistance. They found their base, you know, Leia's, you know, kind of at her wit's end. She's waiting for Luke, you know, to come. There's a specific quote, Leia is certain that Master Luke Skywalker will return. Interesting. I mean, she ended up being right ultimately. So, you know, get somebody who has that much faith in you, in your life. So, you know, we begin with this great, like, sweeping shot of, like, it, like, starts at, like, a bird's eye view, and then, like, it flies past, you know, like, a lot of, you know, Star Destroyers and stuff. And then we meet up with Poe, and he talks and all the First Order people so that the Resistance has enough time to pack their stuff up and escape from the base. And, you know, right off the bat, we're introduced to an element of this movie that a lot of people weren't really a fan of, which is the humor. So, you know, just real quick, just to kind of set up, I mean, not set, like, I guess explain or whatever. Like, Star Wars has always had, you know, like a kind of quirky sense of humor. You know, it's like, I mean, people hate when other people say this, but Star Wars movies were made for kids. So they always had like a childlike whimsy and they had like wacky moments. You know, like you think of C3, I mean, R2D2 and how he like screams like a human being, you know, like, wow! You know, like it's fun. Like there's that moment where him and Luke are on Dagobah and like he's like
It's so
swimming.
good, dude.
And,
Yeah.
you know, like it's just silly, you know, there's like
It's supposed
really
to be
silly
silly,
moments.
dude. The humor's awesome.
And, you know, to be fair, in this scene, there is still a lot of that, you know, like BB-8, you know, he starts beeping and then Poe's like, happy beeps, buddy. Come on. We pulled crazier stuff than this. You know, like there's stuff like that, you know, and when he's talking about Hux, he says, skinny guy, kind of pasty, you know. But then, you know, so he pulls up to the Star Destroyer. I don't know what the big ships are called. And then he's like, hey, I have a message from Leia for General Hugs. You know, instead of Hux, he says Hugs. Okay, that's fine. And then, you know, like Hux answers and then he pretends that he doesn't hear him. And then one of the other leaders is like, I think he's toying with you, sir. You know, but then there's this really weird line where Poe's like, okay, well, look, I can't hold forever. If you see him, tell him I have a message for him about his mother. And it's like, Star Wars has never, like, that's a joke that, like, somebody in the MCU would make, or, you know,
Yes.
like, in, like, you know, like your typical teenage kind of story. You know, like, that's, like, early 2010s humor, you know, it's like, yo, mama, bro, oh, got him, you know, like that, like, stupid frat boy. And, like, even, like, when I saw this movie for the first time, I'm pretty sure I was like, what did he just say? Like, so, you know, just, like, real quick, what do you think about the humor in this movie as a whole? And do you all share the criticism that it feels at odds with all the other installments in the franchise at all?
So I don't mind. Actually, I don't mind that mom joke, but I do think the humor is not great. In my little introduction thing I wrote up here, I said that this movie introduces bits and pieces of a galaxy not so far away. And I think that's the issue with the movie as a whole, really, and especially the humor is the humor feels weird compared to everything else in Star Wars. Like Star Wars has always had some great humor. Um, but in this movie, it's just weird. I don't mind the whole thing with Poe at the beginning. I thought it was like a fun way to open the movie up.
Yeah, I think it's really good, but that
Yeah.
one line, some people were
I get it.
kind of
Yeah.
like, what? And
Yeah.
then too, I noticed this movie has a lot of like, I mean, not a lot, but like there are like a few like minor swear words, but they're just swear words that we use. And it kind
Yeah.
of feels like, oh, so these characters live in, this, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away type universe, but they talk kind of like we do.
Yeah. And
That's a
that's one
little
reason
weird.
the originals were so good, even over the prequels, was because they committed to just the weirdness of the world that they lived in. And in this, it's kind of like they get rid of all the weirdness, and it's like, okay,
A little
this
bit, yeah.
doesn't feel like a galaxy, like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. This feels like not so long ago in our galaxy, not too far away. So,
All right,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so real quick thing I've noticed about this scene. What would have happened if they would have just blown up Poe's TIE fighter? I guess their
What?
plan would have failed, right? Like, I
So,
wonder if he
yeah.
thought about. I mean, he probably did, and was like, "Well, screw it," because he is kind of like Han Solo, where like he doesn't really think about stuff that he does.
So I had this thought earlier today, and I was like, you know who Poe reminds me of? Poe actually reminds me of Luke. If Luke never grew up on the farm, if Luke would have actually grown up on like Yavin, like Poe did. Poe grew up on Yavin, um, in the Resistance his whole life. So I'm like, what if Luke, instead of always dreaming about being a pilot and seeing other worlds, what if Luke actually grew up in the rebellion from the beginning? I think him and Poe are very similar.
Dude, that never even came close to crossing my mind. Oh my,
Yeah.
wow.
And I know, people compare Han and Poe. To me, Han is a lot more like Rey. Rey and Han are very similar, but to me, Poe
Yeah,
is
that's true.
actually
Yeah.
like the Luke character. Obviously, they take drastic, departures from that. But in terms of the pilot, Luke was the pilot.
Kind of like that in A New Hope. Like he
reminds me of A New Hope.
Yeah,
Luke,
like he's like really cocky in that movie.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Then I also want to say something, and I want to preface a lot of things before we get into this, and I hope people hear this, is the fact that a lot of things that happen in Star Wars don't make sense. It's not supposed to be our world. It's sci-fi and it's science fantasy. It's not it doesn't make sense sometimes. Like, I know we're going to get into it right now, but like, just as an example, the bombs falling in space. That, for one, that makes sense. And two, if you're just going to boil down your, like, the whole movie into, oh, they drop bombs, there's no gravity in space. It's like, dude, that, for one, it's not how it works. You can push bombs out of something. And you know what I mean? It's just like,
and two, like there's actually, I forget exactly what it was, but like there's some, I don't know if it's like magnetic or something, but like there's something inside of them that like made them just fall straight down.
Yeah, and the point is, that is such a dumb argument, and a lot of people pick and choose the dumbest things about this movie to be upset over, instead of legitimate reasons, that you can critique this movie and may have an issue with it. Now, the only thing I want to say, and then I'll hand it back over, is in A New Hope, one of the things that has always bothered me since I was a little kid about A New Hope is Luke taking the shot to blow up the Death Star. It's not the fact that he made the shot. It's Star Wars. It's meant to be unbelievable somewhat. It's like, oh, he used the Force. Wow, look, that was amazing. But it was the fact that when he fired the torpedoes into the Death Star, they do a right angle when they go into the port. Like, it's not like he just fires them straight into the port. He fires them, and somehow they make like a right angle.
Oh yeah, because like the hole's like here,
Yes.
and then they go like this, and they go like that. Yeah. I
Like,
never, yeah, I've
people
seen
don't
that
bring that
movie
up.
like plenty of times, and I never really even. I kind of
From
gloss
seeing
over.
that, I was like, wow. Obviously, that was some kind of special effects, thing that they had to do it that way. But it's like these are the things that you can just let go. Like it doesn't matter. There's so many other parts of the movie that I think you can have such an interesting and deep conversation about, aside from boiling it down and focusing on some really irrelevant stuff. And that's how I feel about like this mom joke at the beginning. I think it was kind of funny. Like, okay, not the greatest humor in the world. It's kind of like MCU humor, but it's like an icebreaker. We're icebreak. This is the beginning of the movie. We're breaking the
Yeah,
ice. I get it. It's all right. So yeah. All right.
yeah. Okay,
Handing it
so
back
then
over.
once they realize he's stalling, what follows is it. In my opinion, maybe I don't know if I'm gonna say the best, but top 3 openings to a Star Wars movie, like the space battle dogfight in
Dude,
this
it's
is
so good.
freaking great, and
It's so
we
good.
get to see. I really thought about this recently. It never really clicked with me before, but like this is one of my problems with the prequels, right? Is that everybody's always saying, and even in the original trilogy, Anakin was the greatest pilot. He's such a good pilot. Is the great pilot in the room with us right now? Because what did he do in the prequels when he was flying anything that was that impressive? I don't know. But here
Uh,
we get to see why Poe is like Leia's right hand pilot, because he's freaking drifting an X-wing, which we've never seen before. He's leading like
yeah.
3 ships through these like slicer things, and he's like flying through it, and then they're flying through it, and they're like, you know, they're like slicing up themselves. Like we get to see Poe in his element here.
I want to interject. So I completely agree with you, and that's why Poe started to remind me of Luke. Because if you remember in last episode, I asked you, I said, "Hey Tony, do you think Poe is somewhat force sensitive?" And it completely slipped my mind that Poe's backstory. I alluded to it earlier. He grew up on Yavin during the time of the rebellion, and there was what the last force tree in the galaxy was brought from the Jedi Temple and brought and placed in Yavin. And he used to, as a kid growing up, play on this tree that was connected to the Force, the last one in the galaxy. So growing up, they're alluding to in Star Wars in his backstory that maybe it rubbed off on him, and maybe that he can be somewhat sensitive to the Force because of this,
Huh.
because of growing up like that. It's actually very interesting, but that's
Where
why he
did
sort of
you
reminds me of Luke. I'm
where's this backstory for him?
I'm gonna look. I don't know if it's a novel or comic. Looking it up, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, okay, so then do you just want me to keep going?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so Poe fights he's shooting off some of the cannons and stuff. And then we're introduced to Captain Kennedy, who's, just like a great, cheesy Star Wars villain. I love that guy. And then, the resistance escapes, and then Leia's like, okay, Poe, great job, come back to base. And then this is where we get our first glimpse as to Poe's arc in this movie. He's cocky, and sometimes he disobeys orders. He says to Leia, no, I'm not bringing everyone back. We have a chance to take out a dreadnought, and then Leia's instantly like, what did he just say? I'm going to beat this boy's ass?
I'm pretty sure it was in his comic series
Okay.
through Marvel. I'm pretty sure, but yeah.
So then, we get the fight with the dreadnought, the other fighters, are
Dude.
following Poe. It's badass, like it
It's
just
so
blows
like
shit
Star
up
Trek.
effortless.
Yeah, that is a sci-fi machine right there.
Oh yeah. That's one of the things that the sequel trilogy creates that I like. There's some things that they created that I'm not a fan of, but this is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, why haven't we had something like this in a Star Wars movie before? It totally makes sense. And like it's cool, like because the First Order, in some ways, they seem like they're stupider than the Empire, but they make up for it, I guess, by having better technology and stuff like that. And then so soon we're introduced to Paige Tico, who is an important character, even though she doesn't have a lot of screen time. Now, when I first saw this movie, her sacrifice scene just had me sitting there like it is so well directed. It's operatic. It's intense. It's somber. How they play with the sound design and the cinematography. Like, you know, like she falls off of a ladder and then like the remote falls, you know, because she has to press the remote to detonate the bombs, and then it looks like it's gonna fall past her, and then she catches it and presses it and sacrifices herself. And I saw, there's this YouTube channel called Film Joy, and there's a guy Mikey Newman. I don't know if you know who he
Never
is.
heard of him.
He's actually an ex-developer at Gearbox Studios.
Oh,
but
nice.
He's been doing YouTube stuff for a while, and he did a video about The Last Jedi, and he said something about Rian Johnson's filmmaking style that I just love. He says he knows how to make small feel big and big feel small.
That's true.
And, you know, like,
yeah, small feel
is
big
one
right
of the
here.
biggest, most epic moments in the whole series. That might make you think I'm crazy. I don't care. It's freaking great. And, you know, like, he gave her, like, she's, in my opinion, you know, a great heroic character, even though she says maybe like 3 or 5 lines, but like I just love that whole sequence.
I have to back you up here. I think that Paige Tico is one of the best characters in the movie, especially the way she is written, the way it is obviously directed and everything. I mean, you're spot on. I have in here a list of my favorite characters, and she's in there. I think that she is actually, and they should have highlighted this more in the movie, she is the spark that lights the fire. Seeing, and we'll get into it, but seeing the sacrifices that the rebels make, it's done and wrapped up so well into this moment here with the bombers at the beginning of the movie. It is awesome. So,
and then so they blow up the dreadnought. You know, it was a hard fought victory, and then there's just a shot that I want to give props to Carrie Fisher.
Oh.
You know, may she rest in peace. You know, I was sad when I found out she died. You know, her performance in The Force Awakens was really good. Her performance in this movie, A1.
Yeah.
A1.
Yeah.
This is her at her best.
I have a lot of problems with the way they wrote her character, but in terms of her acting, yes, I agree.
Yeah, for sure. And there's just like this like quiet shot of her seeing, you know, like she's looking at, you know, all the pilots who died on the screen. You know, there's like red X's over them, and then there's like a shot right before Poe and the others arrive where she's just like sitting at a table like this or something like that, and she doesn't say a word. You just see everything on her face and her physicality. Like, she's broken. She's barely holding it together, you know, in this position that she's been put in. It's great, you know. I love, that's one of the other reasons that this is still my favorite Star Wars trilogy, in spite of everything, because I think the performances in this trilogy are way better than the performances in any other Star Wars movie. And that's not throwing shade at anybody. That's just saying the caliber of the cast and all that, and how everything's a little grittier, a little more realistic. I just think outshines other movies in that respect, at least.
I do want to preface something, and then I want to get into 2 points real quick before we move on, because I know what we're about to go into. So what I want to say is, for anyone who is listening or who has listened to all of our Star Wars retrospectives, or there's a lot of different people out there that like the originals, people that like the prequels, people that like the sequels, whatever. We love all of Star Wars, and like you said, this is your favorite Star Wars movie. My favorite is Episode 3. Now we're not going to be on here just trashing one thing and loving another.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We're trying to be fair, and we're talking about things we love, and we're critiquing things that we think, could have been improved on, whatnot.
I think we're positively and negatively talking about every Star Wars movie so far.
Yeah. So I think so too. I think we did a great job. And then I want to preface this a little bit because you said this is your favorite. Originally, this wasn't my least favorite, but after watching it again, I think this might be my least favorite.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't expect
Well, now
that
I'm
because
really excited to talk.
yeah, I actually for the longest time I was like, oh, Last Jedi, it's not my least favorite. But then watching it back, I'm like, there's a lot wrong with this movie. Like, there's a lot I love, but there's a lot that's just wrong with it. I think as a movie,
Yeah,
not
I
even a Star
mean,
Wars movie,
I
just a
don't.
movie in general.
It's weird, yeah, because my recent reaction was I both like it more than I did, and also like it less. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
there were things that I've realized about this movie that I never realized I love, and then there's stuff that I thought that I liked that I realized I never liked. So I'm glad that's one reason I'm glad we're doing these retrospectives. It keeps you open minded and
Yeah.
all that. So that's kind of what I just want to preface this with. Um, and then one thing I want to say about Poe here is, like you said, he is their elite, their ace pilot. So why is a pilot giving commands to a bomber squadron or giving orders to an army to attack? They should be taking their orders from General Leia. They should not be
Yeah.
taking orders from
I
Poe.
do find it weird that like Leia told Poe to come back.
Yeah.
I assume that she would have told that message was for everyone else too. But then Poe says no, and then he tells everybody to follow his lead.
Why do
And
they
they're
follow
all
his
like,
lead?
not one of those effers is like, "Hey Poe, what the hell are you doing? Leia told us to do this." They're all like, "Okay, Poe, okay." Like, how stupid are you? Like, really? Like, what the hell?
So yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying. And I think after I realized that and I saw this in the movie, I was like, okay, this movie, the writing is going to take a turn
Yeah,
because they
that whole
obviously have an
conflict
agenda
felt a
with it.
little manufactured, if
Exactly.
I'm being
There's
honest.
like it felt out of character for like these characters. I get they're going through something like their development, but I realized with the writing that we were kind of in for a bumpy ride with that because it felt very manufactured. So
You
yeah,
know, I never really looked at it that way, but that's actually a great point. And I have no problem saying, yeah, I think that sucks. All right,
yeah, it's just
so
weird. Great moment and one of the best openings for a Star Wars
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
I agree. It's awesome.
So then the Resistance failed. It's like a running thing through this movie, which I kind of hate that like the First Order is just absolutely terrible at fighting the Resistance. Like they're just so incompetent, and there's a specific line later that I'm gonna bring up, but like it's essentially lampshading that, which I don't know why they would do that. I mean, like it's amusing, but so everyone fails, and then someone says, "Oh, Hux, you have a message from Supreme Leader Snoke," and then he's just immediately like, okay, I'll take it in my chambers, bye. And then he starts walking, and then a freaking giant hologram of Snoke's head just appears right in front of him, and he's like,
I love it, dude.
you freaking idiot, you failed. And then Hux is trying to explain himself, and Snoke force throws him around the room from wherever he is, like that. That like that's a great way. Like it's a
Amazing.
amusing moment. Great humor and stuff, but it also is a great way to show Snoke's powerful as hell.
Yep.
And it's like the same thing, and I think it's Empire when Vader force chokes a guy through a monitor room,
Yeah.
and that guy's in another room. How did he learn to do? Oh my god! Okay.
Wow, I'm so glad you brought up Empire Strikes Back because I want to reference
Oh,
my opening
I
thing that I wrote
you
down.
just reminded me. I had it in my head to say this and I forgot. Oh, the movie starts with the enemies finding the hero's base and trying to blow it up. That reminds me of another second installment in a Star Wars trilogy, but I can't remember what it's called.
It is very much like Empire, and I put I love that many moments feel like a copy and paste of Empire Strikes Back because it feels like it in the best ways. Feels like A classic Star Wars story in that way.
Yeah.
The bad guys shine, and to me, the Last Jedi, the bad guys they shine, and the Force is extremely prominent in the movie in the ways that it was in Empire, and I like that.
So then we cut to Finn. He's in like a hyperbaric oxygen chamber thing, I guess. That's not really what it is, obviously, but I don't know what it is. I've never seen it before. So you know, he wakes up. I didn't even put this together until now. He wakes up, and the first thing he does is he screams Rey, which okay, it makes sense because you know he was with Rey fighting
love
Kylo,
this.
and he
I
got
know.
knocked out. So you know he still thinks he's back there, and he's worried about Rey, even though he was unconscious for that whole fight. So then how would
They really do a number on his character.
Whatever. So then you know he gets out of the thing and he's walking around with like a bit like a water pad thing on, and then you know it's supposed to be like slapsticky.
I kind of
And
like
then
it. I'm not
yeah,
gonna
it's
lie.
not.
I liked it.
Yeah, he runs into Poe, and I never had a problem with this until now. I get that he asked where Rey is because you know he wants to make sure she's safe. No problem. But him and Poe, like he sees Poe, you know, his friend who he barely saw in the last movie, and he, you know, was in a life-threatening situation. I think him and Poe should have like had a brief conversation about stuff first, you know, like talked about, you know, all the crazy stuff they've been through. And then Finn could have been like, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you, where's Rey?" But it's like, no, these two friend characters show up, and instead of their bond being strengthened in this movie like you would think in a sequel, he's just immediately like, "I don't care about you. Where's Rey?" And it's like Poe should have just been like some character Finn really didn't know, and it would have served the exact same purpose. Like I don't know. Like my problem with this movie is that it doesn't let the cast be together and grow closer more for like most of the movie, and it's like you can't really make a trilogy and do that because then in the third movie, which is what they did, you're just gonna have to like rush a whole bunch of character development and stuff. So I mean, I don't
There's
like
so
that.
much to say about this, dude. They ruin Finn's character in this movie. He's
I partially agree, but yeah,
and
I
I'll
get
get
why
into it
people feel that
later,
way.
especially the ending. But Finn, they ruined him because of the ending. But in this moment, I know what you're saying, and it's just what are they doing with Finn? We'll get into it, but what it was done.
Yeah,
Finn's character was not done well. I'm sorry.
yeah. I mean, I'll share why I don't entirely feel that way, but I also, you know, whenever I hear people say that, I'm like, I mean, I get it, dude. I get it. You know. Okay, so then we cut to this movie does a great thing where like it like asks questions about a character and then it transitions to something relevant to that character. So Finn, where's Rey? Cut to Octo, and that's where she is. Which, by the way, one of my favorite Star Wars planets. It's so beautiful. It seems
It's
so
cool. Yeah.
peaceful, and you know, you could tell there's like so much history here. You know, like it feels like, you know, like a old tourist destination where like you know some classic war was fought, or maybe there was like a army base way back or something. Like it just has a great lived-in feeling to it. And then okay, so we're getting to something very contentious. Okay, so you know we're back with Rey where she was at the end of the Force Awakens. You know she finds Luke, she hands him the saber. Luke takes the saber, takes a good long look at it, and then he throws it over his shoulder and walks away. So when you saw that the first time, after waiting all this time to see what they were going to do with Luke, and then oh she's giving him the lightsaber. Oh my God, he's looking. Wait, what the hell? Wait, where's he going? Is he leaving the movie? So what was your reaction at that moment for the first time that you saw it?
I'm gonna have such a different take on this than anybody else because I remember I remember exactly my friend. I remember who I was with, where I was sitting in the theater, and I remember this movie vividly. I remember so many things about this movie, more than any other Star Wars movie in the theater. And when this happened, I had a big smile on my face.
Really?
And, yes, and I was like,
I didn't expect that at all.
yeah. So he's looking at the lightsaber and he throws it over his shoulder, and I'm sitting there smiling. I'm like, oh, I was like, we're in for a movie. I'm like, they are really committing to this. And it was because this was the first and the biggest subversion of expectations in the movie. And I don't think subversions of expectations is a bad thing at all. I think it can be very, very good. So when I first saw this, I was like, this immediately, and I wrote it down here, immediately feels out of character for Luke. And that's not a bad thing because this is not the same Luke as the originals. I think that's a big problem later on, but I get how you're not bringing back the same exact character. Something has happened to him between the last time we saw him and now. And when they did this, I'm like, oh, now we're going to see what happened to him since episode 6. I'm like, and I'm like, what happened? And I think what is bad about the movie is their explanation of what happened. But
Yeah.
this intro of him, I didn't mind at all. I was like, oh wow, this isn't the first time he threw down a lightsaber. He threw down his lightsaber in front of the Emperor. Why wouldn't he do it in front of some random girl that shows up on his island? Like,
it's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I unfortunately I didn't see this in the theater. I watched it for the first time. I rented it from Redbox, and I surprisingly didn't have anything spoiled for me about the movie, but like I saw vague comments of people saying, like I saw one comment that's like, I didn't think it was possible to make a Star Wars movie worse than The Phantom Menace. And I'm like,
oh, that's coming back to theaters, by the way.
Oh, sweet. I was like, wait,
for its 25th
people
anniversary.
are hating this movie, and then a lot of it's centered around, what they did with Luke's character. And I was like, okay, now I really want to see it. So then I was watching the movie and that moment happens. I was just really confused. I was like, oh, okay. And then, I think my only problem with this scene is that, I feel like any normal person would have been wondering, who are you? Why are you here? Why are you handing me a lightsaber that I haven't wielded for 20 plus years? But he doesn't ask any of those questions right away. And it's like, I don't I guess that on one hand, I guess that shows how jaded he was. He didn't care about anything. He couldn't have been bothered to want an explanation about that. But I also kind of am like, Luke, are you an idiot? You still have a brain, though. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't you at least want to know that?
I have a small little diatribe I want to get into. I'm obviously going to expand on it later on, but I want to say that there is a through line through the Star Wars movies, specifically, the main Skywalker saga. The Jedi were prominent in the prequels, but they were wrong. The Jedi in the prequels were wrong. We see this in Obi-Wan and somewhat in Yoda in the original trilogy. They start to lead Luke down the wrong path, the dogmatic views of the Jedi. And Luke takes a different route, as I just alluded to when he was in front of the Emperor and Vader, threw down his lightsaber. Luke doesn't make the same mistakes that the Jedi, the prequels, make. Problem with this movie is a lot of fans, and I think this even rubbed off on Rian Johnson, who, let's clarify, was the writer-director. He wasn't just the director.
Yeah.
He was the writer-director. That needs to be clarified. He had too much power with this. I'm sorry. But
Rian Johnson's maybe my favorite filmmaker, at least one of my top 5. I love him as a director. I adore him as a director. As a writer, not so much. As a writer, not as much.
I don't think he understood, and I feel so confident saying this. I don't think he understood the nuances and the differences between the Jedi. That the Jedi were wrong. So what happens is Luke does start to act like Luke from the original trilogy, but the problem is they take his character who was on that trajectory and they kind of turn him around to be like the dogmatic Jedi of the prequels and make him sort of like a new Obi-Wan when Obi-Wan was wrong and he grew
I got
past
something to
that.
say
So
about that. But yeah, I do.
We're gonna get to it, but
I really rip off that Band-Aid.
I'm sorry, but I think Star Wars fans understand this. I think they do it, but I don't think Rian Johnson did not understand this. So That's why I don't have a problem with him throwing the lightsaber down. Obi-Wan in the prequels told Anakin, "This lightsaber is your life." They were wrong.
Exactly.
Even Yoda later in the movie says that the Jedi texts are just some old books. That Rey has everything she needs to know inside of her. Same thing with Luke, especially Luke in Return of the Jedi. He had everything that he needed inside of him. He didn't need that weapon, and he strike me down. The Emperor was saying strike me down, but Luke was like, no, I'm not going to make the same mistakes that the Jedi made. So I don't have a problem with him throwing his lightsaber behind him. Whatever. They're past this. They're developing. They're moving. The through line through Star Wars is continuing until the writer who didn't understand that starts going backwards. Like
I
think it's pretty evident.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, but yeah. So I want to speed up a little bit because there's been a lot to dice. So then Luke walks away, and then this is a really weird part of the movie. He changes his clothes, which shows us a very important plot detail, which is Luke has a designated outfit that he puts on to walk to the edge of a cliff and stare at nothing. I don't understand it. We don't get an explanation for it. I don't know why we have to see this. He's like telling Rey to leave, and she's being persistent. And then, it is symbolic. Like in Return of the Jedi, he changes from light clothes to dark clothes. I mean, that's not exactly a big creative thing, but it's like a reference to that. And then we get this really weird part of the movie where Rey just follows Luke around as he does stuff, and like it's paced and edited, so like, why are we wasting? I mean, weird. I guess that's the point. Like, he's wasting her time, but bro, like, why do I have to watch Luke catch a big fish with a really big spear? How did he learn to do that? I don't know. And then he's drinking milk from some animal's titties, which is fine, I guess, but like, because that's the best way to drink milk. I've heard,
when I saw this, I was like, "Oh, Disney had their way with this." I was like, "Yeah, this is Disney."
It's so stupid. I don't know. And then Chewie kicks in the door of his hut, because freaking Chewie's like that.
Chewie's like, "I'm over this."
Older brother who just like, no, stop being a freaking idiot. You're gonna listen to what I have to say, you freaking douche. And then he's like, Luke's like Chewie, and then he freaking asks, "Where's Han?" And you get to, shout out to Mark Hamill. This is far and away his best performance in this whole saga. He A1 yet again. And then, how he asks, "Where's Han?" His face. You just know he's instantly like, wait, Chewie, there's a certain guy that I knew who's always been attached to your hip. He's not here. What the hell's going on? Something's not right.
Good moment.
Great moment. Yeah. And then we cut to Kylo. He goes to Snoke's throne room. He was summoned. Now, I know I said I wanted to speed it up, but unfortunately, this scene, I pretty much have to specifically quote every line of dialogue.
Because it's okay. I don't have a lot for this scene.
All their conversation is just so relevant. So then, Snoke, he goes on this long thing where he's like, when I saw your bloodline, I saw the potential for a new Vader. Now I fear I was mistaken. And then Kylo's like, I've given everything I have to you, to the dark side. And then this is one of the moments when I was watching the movie for the first time that I was like, oh. Snoke says, take that ridiculous thing off. And then now Kylo takes off his helmet, and he's just scarred. He looks like a scared, angry, embarrassed kid. And then he's like, Snoke says, you have too much of your father's heart in you, young Solo. Yep. Snoke is cold. Everything Snoke says is cold. He's cold, dude. He's so cold. He's ruthless. And then Kylo says, I killed Han Solo. When the time came, I didn't hesitate. Now, I never put this together until now. He says, I didn't hesitate to kill Han. Homeboy was lying.
He lied, yeah.
He's just trying to make himself look good. Because he explicitly said, I don't know if I'm torn in half. So Kylo is a hypocrite, and he's afraid of, I admitting that he's not as powerful as he thinks he is.
He does this again towards the beginning of the third act.
Yeah, and then Snoke. I feel like this is like Ryan, because Ryan Johnson kind of likes to play with like structure and like
He likes to
meta
subvert
narrative,
everything.
In movie. So then Snoke says, "You were unbalanced, vested by a girl who had never held a lightsaber. You failed."
I love that line.
Which is exactly what the fans were saying.
Yep.
So Ryan Johnson was like, "I'm going to take some of the stuff the fans are saying and make it part of the movie," and I think it works really well.
I loved it
most of the time. And then Snoke's like, I don't remember what he says before this, but then he says, "Unless you know Vader, you're just a child in a mask." Snoke's, he's essentially saying, "Kylo, you're an embarrassment. You're a disgrace. Get the hell out of my face, you piece of gum." And then,
and it works, though.
Kylo's riding the elevator. And then I love this moment, too, where he's like looking at the helmet and then he just starts smashing it against the wall and he just breaks the damn thing. And then it opens up and there are 2 First Order crew members there. And he's like, "Prepare my shit." And he just like walks away, he's like, "Okay, I'm a kid in a mask. No, screw this mask and screw you, seeing Kylo kind of take that first step to becoming his own person, which would be ruined by the next movie. I didn't say that one. Okay, so then quick drink break.
Yeah, I don't have a lot for this part. I pretty much, I just love the interaction, especially with Hux. I think Hux had one of the best performances of the movie, actually.
Really? Because I felt like he did absolutely nothing.
No, he does absolutely nothing. But the actor, how he portrays him, amazing. Like whenever he gets done talking to Snoke, and then he walks out and passes Kylo, and he just kind of gives him that look.
He just like smirk, like, mm-hmm.
I love that.
That rivalry was fun in this movie for sure. And then, so we're cutting back to Rey and Luke, and she told Luke everything. And then, she's like, "Yeah, Leia, is hoping that you'd be able to come back and help us out, bro. So what do you say? I'll even buy you a space pizza." And then Luke's like, "You don't need Luke Skywalker." And then, like Rey, a lot of people like to say, "Oh, Rey's a Mary Sue. Rey has no personality." Rey has no personality. What are you talking about, bro? Because she's like, "Did you hear a word I just said?" She's like flabbergasted that he, she is kind of a stand-in for like Star Wars fans who are like fanboys of Luke Skywalker, and she's like,
I actually did not write down a lot about her.
You didn't respond how Luke Skywalker would respond. What? She has that naivety, and I love that. I think it's endearing to her character and kind of makes her stand out in a way.
Yeah, I don't have a lot about her in this movie, so yeah.
And then a lot of fans had a problem with what Luke says here, but he's like, "What do you think I'm going to do? Walk out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order?" And if you remember,
I like that.
What does Anakin call Qui-Gon's lightsaber in Phantom Menace? A laser sword. So Luke has kind of reverted to a sense of like childlike irreverence. He's
exactly. I love it.
He's closed himself off from the Force and stuff, and it's kind of like he's become willingly ignorant once again of this universe because he wants nothing to do with it.
Great, that's a great point, actually.
Oh no, Rey following him around happens later. Sorry, I was wondering why that wasn't in my notes. It's because it's like, and then
first they cut back to the Resistance.
And then Rey's walking around. Wait, hold on.
Because I do have something I want to say about that. The part. Do you miss the part where Leia?
No, I have that written. I just forget.
Okay.
What the heck is going on? Sorry, guys.
Because after Luke and Rey, they cut back to the Resistance, and they introduce a character that I really want to talk about.
Oh no, that's later. Yeah, because I wrote stuff down as in sequence. So yeah, I'm on track. Sorry. Okay. So then, Rey's following Luke around, and she hears like these voices calling out to her, and she's like, "What's that?" And then she finds like this hollowed out tree where Luke has the original Jedi text. And dude, the production design in this movie,
Yeah, dude.
incredible. This
I will
tree
say it's the
is
best out
a
of any
real
movie.
thing
Yeah,
that they had. Dude, practical effects are just never going to be beaten ever. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like it's just great. I love the look. Everything about the look of this movie. And then,
I agree.
Luke, follows her, and then, he says, "Who are you?" Remember this, by the way. Remember this for when we talk about Rise of Skywalker. He asks, "Who are you?" And then, it's funny. She says, oh no, she says, I reference this in The Force Awakens, but like when Kylo Ren's reading her mind, he says, at night when you can't sleep, you picture an island. And then,
Yeah.
like Rey says to him that, like she feels like she knows this place. Never explained. I don't know what that was supposed to be leading to, possibly, but it didn't become anything. Plot point that leads to nowhere.
Maybe because
Maybe.
even when she was on Jakku, she was essentially on an island herself because she was alone. So maybe that now she's on a legitimate island, secluded, like basically in exile with Luke. She knows that she grew up like that. It's familiar to her.
I mean, I'm going to be
That's all
honest. To
I
me,
can
that
think of.
sounds like
I
kind
don't
of
know.
a stretch, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh, it is. It is a stretch.
And then, Luke, he says, yeah, these are the original Jedi texts. They're the only thing, they and me are the only thing left of the Jedi religion. Luke calls Jedi a religion because it is a religion, so like, it's like, like Luke, he's apart from all this stuff, that he was indoctrinated into kind of, and, now he sees it for what it is. He's like, yeah, being a Jedi is a religion, bro. Like it's like how he, like his perspective in this movie is like how like a outsider, like somebody
Yeah.
who's not a Jedi or sensitive to the Force would see it. And then, there's that funny moment where he asks Rey where she's from. She says nowhere. And then he's like, no one's from nowhere. And then she's like, Jakku. He's like, okay, that is pretty much nowhere.
Yeah. See, that's the humor I like. I think that they obviously make him this hermit, and it's a weird the way they do it, but he does have that Luke humor, and that humor is awesome. I love it.
And then again, remember that she's saying she's from nowhere, not significant. Just remember that, because I'm going to go on a rampage in the next episode. And then he asks why she's here, and then Daisy Ridley's performance in this movie, it was great in the last movie. In this movie, I think it might be her best. Maybe
She's
she's saying like, something inside of me has always been there. I need someone to help me find my place in all this. And then Luke's like, you need a teacher, but that ain't me. I'm not going to be your teacher. I came to this island to die. And it, so, when you heard him say that, and you realize, he genuinely wants to die. Like he thinks he should just die. How are you feeling about that? Like, did you still feel like that was on brand for him, or were you starting to be like, wait, you came to this island, wait, whoa, to die? What? Huh?
I just thought that he was doing the Yoda thing. I essentially think that they took what was fundamentally Luke about him away from him and made him another Yoda or another Obi-Wan. And
Yeah,
that's my issue with this character in this. So
yeah, I feel like, because in The Force Awakens, this is yet another plot point that led to nothing. Han says that he heard rumors that Luke went looking for the first Jedi temple. First of all,
like, why?
where did he hear those rumors from? Who was spreading rumors about where Luke went? How would they have known? Because he clearly didn't tell anyone where he was going, right? So I don't know what that's about. And then I feel like that's why Luke should have went. Like he should have left to like pursue some kind of like knowledge or something. So instead of him like being, like the hermit who isolates himself, he is just like kind of trying to make himself better. You know, so then when Ray finds him, he's still Luke, but he's just like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, I kind of feel bad that I left, you know, and people were worried about me, but I felt like I had to do this. Yeah. I do feel like that would have been better, you know. It's not like
They just
I
made him
really
a
like
copy and
Luke's
paste
story
Yoda.
in this movie, but I don't think about it and go, yeah, that's the best thing they could have done. No, that's definitely not the best thing they could have done. But I just personally don't mind it. You know, so then you know, we cut back to Leia and, you know, her quiet reflection on what just happened, and then, you know, she slaps Poe, immediately demotes him. And then I freaking love this line from her. She says, "Oh no, Poe's like, there were heroes on that mission," and then she says, "Dead heroes, no leaders." Damn, that is icy.
I think Poe. Okay, that's so super important for Poe in this because
Yeah,
Poe obviously learns. Let me skip down a little bit here. Poe obviously learns. I gotta find this, man. Poe learns leaders save lives and they don't take them. And that was something that he was blinded by at the beginning of this movie, where he just wanted to destroy the First Order at any cost, and it costs lives. And Leia being a real listen to this, bro. Leia being a real leader wants him to understand that a leader saves lives, doesn't cost lives to get the goal done. They save lives, which is a theme throughout the whole movie. But that is important for Poe's character, and I think that's what they do with Poe's character here, which is why they make him sort of he's not the same character from The Force Awakens. It seems like nothing in The Force Awakens for his character mattered. His character could have been a brand new character in this movie, starting from the beginning and going through a full development. It's just weird. It just doesn't feel connected to The Force Awakens, but whatever.
I mean, yeah, we'll probably get more into that later. But okay,
Yeah.
so the resistance is somehow tracked through light. I mean, yeah, the resistance is somehow tracked through light speed because somebody literally says they've tracked us through light speed. And then, you know, this is a scene when I saw this for the first time, I was shook. You know, so Kylo Ren's flying his ship, and then, you know, they're like blowing up parts of the big ship.
Yeah.
I don't know the terms for these things. I'm sorry, people. I'm a fake Star Wars fan. And then, you know, Kylo Ren flies close to where Leia is, and then, you know, she again, you know, quiet performance by Carrie Fisher. She senses Kylo Ren. He senses her. You know, they just have this, and then, dude, Kylo Ren, like, he has his hand on the trigger, like he's about to fire at her, and he can't do it, bro. He can't do it, and, you know, like, you know, like right before somebody else shoots her, like, she has this moment where she closes her eyes, like she's almost accepting it. Like, I guess this is gonna be what happens now. It's a freaking
I like
amazing
the conflict
scene.
in Kylo's character. They do his character so well, bro.
And dude, it's such a shame. We'll get more into this in Rise of Skywalker, but it's a shame that Carrie Fisher passed away,
dude,
after this movie, or I think before this movie came out or something. Because
yeah, it was like right before the movie came out.
They were clearly building towards Kylo and Leia having some kind of confrontation, and they couldn't really do it, and that's such a tragedy, dude. Because that would have been just, I would have died, honestly. And then this is another scene that people had a problem with, and I actually cheered. Like, I literally stood up and was like cheering when I saw this scene. So, you know, Leia, you know, somebody blasts a hole through her part of the ship, and then she like flies out in space, and she's just floating there. And then she has this moment where, like, it like zooms in on her, and like her hand like twitches a little bit, and then she starts force pulling herself back into the ship. Dude, because the only time we never seen Leia kind of use the Force was at the end of Empire, where Luke calls her name, and then like she kind of hears him, and like she knows where he is. And
Yeah.
then
So why is
like,
it an issue in this movie?
it's like a little bit of like, wait, did she heard him? So does that
Yeah,
mean she also Force? And then
yeah.
in this movie, she gets to finally use the Force. I was so excited. I was like, oh my god! So, what did you think of this moment? Because some people thought it was like it looked stupid. She's flying through space. Like Mary Poppins, which I hate fanboys. So, like, what did you think of finally seeing Leia actually tap into the Force in like a clear, substantial way?
I think exactly what Luke goes on to say, which I hope we dive into. To think that if the Jedi die, the Force dies is vanity. The Jedi don't have a stronghold on the Force. The Force is in everything. This has been explained since the beginning.
Yeah.
And Leia, literally, like you just said, in Empire, obviously, her and Luke have this connection through the Force. She wasn't doing anything crazy, but I loved it. I thought it was cool. People just have to complain about things. She wasn't doing anything crazy. She literally was just used
Like,
the Force to pull
yeah,
herself
like
back.
it's so, dude. It's so dumb that people thought that she was using the Force to fly when it
No.
clearly zooms in on her and shows her hand twitching, which indicates, oh, she's, the Force is letting her use what's left of her life force in this critical moment to use the Force to do something with her hand. What do Jedis or what do people use the Force to do with their hands? Pull and push. Well,
Yeah.
she's not pushing herself, she's pulling herself.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was cool.
Just watch a movie made for babies then. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm
People
going to be a
people have
little
such a dogmatic
I'm
view.
going to be a little rude through this episode, by the way, and sorry if that bothers some of you, but some of the fan criticism for this movie is
Makes no
freaking
sense.
dog shit.
When people criticize this Star Wars movie, I'm thinking to myself, have you watched any of the Star Wars movies?
All right, so we cut back to Octo, and Chewie's.
Hold on. I want to say something.
Okay.
Because I believe they do, but first, don't they introduce Holdo?
No, that's after this Octo scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just clarifying.
Yeah, I wrote my notes chronologically just so I
Okay.
wouldn't be jumping around, but I've still been jumping around. So but back on Octo, critical plot point: Chewie is cooking a porg, and then other porgs
Yes.
are crying, and he's like yelling at him, and then there's this one porg that's looking at him like, and then he tells it to go away, and then he looks at the porg, and I think he became a vegan, bro.
Porgs are
That's what
weird,
I
but it was
call
a great moment.
character development, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're clearly made to sell toys, but
It
I
is
think
what
they're
it is.
I like them better than the Ewoks because they don't play a big role in fighting any enemy force in this movie.
That's
They're
blasphemy,
just there to
but
be
I
cute
agree.
and whatever. They're stupid and
It's
silly.
just
Who
whatever.
cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? And then Luke goes on to the Falcon, and then he has this moment where he's just reflecting. He just learned that Han died, and there's just actually a scene that they cut out where Luke like goes onto the Falcon and properly like kind of warns Han. I think they cut it because he kind of does the same thing here. Like he sits in the chair and like he bows his head for
Yeah.
a second, and then R2 comes back to life, and Luke's reverted back to being that young kid that he was in the
Yeah.
original trilogy. He's like, R2, what are you doing? It's so sweet, dude.
It's
I love
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm not gonna come back. Nothing can make me change my mind. And then, dude, I cried the first time I saw this. R2 shows Leia's message from A
Dude,
New Hope. Are you kidding me, Ryan Johnson? Come on.
that was awesome.
I
Yeah.
literally had to pause the movie because I just got like really choked up. I was like, oh my.
Even Luke was like, really?
Yeah. I like what he says. He's like, that was a cheap move. Because
Yeah.
R2, like, like they have this like, like really close bond. Like, and it's cool that R2's the one person that like cuts straight to the heart of Luke's,
Yeah.
nonsense and gets him to soften a little bit. Like, who else would it be? I think that's great.
Yeah.
And then I have here in my notes, Luke goes through I think 3 evolutions in this movie. this is his first evolution. He decides to teach Rey, but with the caveat on why the Jedi need to end. So he made a step towards being, a hero and mentor again, but he's still like, no, but I'm still pessimistic. It's not like I've magically changed my mind. And I think, the Jedi are good and I need to be a hero. He's like, no, I'm going to teach you why the Jedi need to end. So it's progress, but it's, not instantaneous. And that's realistic, because people are complicated. Okay, so.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean.
Now on to one of the most baffling scenes in the movie. So a new general is appointed, right? And
oh man,
it's a character
down, bro,
that we've never seen before. I love when movies do this. I love when movies do this stupid thing where they're like,
I have a quote.
By the way, this character has been here all the time, but they've just been off screen, and now we're going to bring them in and act like they've always been a part of these characters' lives. And here's a character who was close with Leia. She's the new general because Leia trained with her. When did that happen? I don't know. Probably in a book or something. It's not important. Shut up. It's like
this is so stupid. This makes it more egregious, and I gotta say this quote because when Leia's unconscious, right? So now the leadership from in that the whatever ship they were on, they come out and literally, I think it was this lady in the leadership says audibly, "It's clear who should take her place."
Yeah,
Vice Admiral Holdo. How is that clear?
Clear to who?
Who is this? Who is this person?
I mean,
and go ahead.
If you're a higher power that's omniscient and exists everywhere and anywhere at the same time, then that would be clear to you because you could see into every possible reality. But yeah, for everybody else, it's like, because I remember seeing it for the first time when they announce her. I'm like, who?
Who?
Star-Lord, man, the legendary outlaw. No.
So one of the first things that Holdo says when she comes out is she addresses Poe. I don't know if you have this. Do you have that down?
She addresses Poe?
Yes.
How so?
She says, quote, "Trigger happy flyboy. Impulsive. Dangerous."
Oh, no, that's when
she's
talking to him because she wants to know what the... Okay, so yeah, we can get to that because the only, Poe's shocked to see that Holdo's a woman, because there's stories about her being a legendary fighter, which now I know.
Okay.
No, here's the thing. I get it. Like there is.
I hate this part.
There is a thing, where sometimes, like if I said to you specifically, like if I told you a story about like some great war hero or something, how likely would you be to assume that they were a man?
So yes, you're right.
Yeah,
and that's why I have a problem.
So I mean,
I know.
I don't.
Yeah,
from that perspective, it's like, oh, Poe, he didn't think she was a woman, but also like I don't like. I've never. It's like they
this
like
has never
made
been a thing
Poe
in Star
sexist,
Wars.
Which I mean,
for what?
It'd be fine if he was that way, but it's like in the last Airbender, Sokka's a sexist, and then but that's established from the beginning, and then so when later he gets schooled by the Kyoshi warriors, it's like that's a payoff to that him having that flaw.
Yeah.
Aside from Leia, and he was always respectful of her, except for the one time he wasn't. So it's like why he's like, oh, I'm shocked that Holdo's a woman. It's like, bro, why? You're serving with Leia. When I heard that,
I'm like, this makes no sense in terms of Star Wars. This makes no sense in terms of Poe's character. The writing feels like it's, like you said earlier, manufactured. This has never been a thing in Star Wars. Leia has been there since the beginning, the very first episode. She has always been capable. Think about Padme. Padme has always been there. She's always been capable. Why would they make Poe a random sex to see? It's like, I don't...
It's like Poe, he obviously serves under Leia, so if anything, you think he'd be like, oh, cool, another strong woman that my strong woman leader trained. Awesome. Cool. Like, it
makes no sense.
It's so weird.
Dude. And they do this specifically to Poe's character, which doesn't make sense. So they say it's clear the person who should take Leia's spot. And then the person who it's clear should take that spot does something directly in opposition to what Leia would do. When she literally looks and when she's talking to Poe, trigger happy flyboy, impulsive, dangerous, last thing we need right now. Stick to your post and follow orders. It's exactly what she says. This is terrible leadership, and this is something Leia would have never done nor have wanted. But she was unconscious.
Yeah,
so.
like I can I've always kind of, where am I? Oh yeah, I've always kind of sympathized with Holdo a little bit because like, like she's, I mean, we'll probably talk more about it later, but like she's been put in this position kind of like randomly and sporadically, and like she's kind of in over her head a little bit. But like I don't know, like
she's so
like
unlikable.
so like because like some people are like, oh well, Poe got demoted, so she doesn't have to tell him anything. Okay, fine, but like, does him getting demoted automatically mean that he doesn't get to know anything at all? Like, I don't know. Like, I would
or
just
that
think
you have
that
to talk to him in this way.
I would just think that like that would limit his access to knowledge a little bit, but because before Finn leaves, to go on the side quest, he asked Leia what her plan was, and then she just like tells him, and he's not even really a part of the Resistance. He's just like
he tried to flee like 2 seconds before that.
Yeah. So
Desert.
like Leia had no problem telling Finn the plan, who's not a soldier, but Poe gets demoted to a lower rank.
It makes no sense. Like, this makes no sense.
It does kind of feel like, I'm going to save it for later when this gets more fleshed out.
Move on.
So, Finn tries to leave because he wants to make sure Rey's safe, and he learns that the Resistance is in danger. And then he meets Rose Tico, Paige Tico's
great
sister.
Introduction.
Yeah, great introduction. Yeah. And I love like when she sees him, she's like, "You're the Finn," and then he's like, "The Finn."
Yeah.
And then Finn says he's not a hero, which I love that because he's not yet trying to be a hero. And then Rose like, Kelly Marie Tran, in my opinion, her I don't think the writing for Rose was always like great, but like her performance was always pretty good in here. She's just like really charismatic. She's like, my sister said, Rose, when it gets tough, that's a real hero. That's who you need to, like she's just like very animated and charismatic.
So I specifically write the introduction of Rose was done very well. She's a great addition. And I love how in this scene that you're describing, they doubled down on what her and her sister had in common, and that is the rebellion.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I had to tase all these people trying to desert. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not trying to desert.
Oh, yeah, like...
And she's like, oh, really?
I love how Finn's like, what? And then she's like, yeah, people trying to leave. He's like, disgraceful. Like,
I love it.
John Boyega is just such a great actor too. He's really like charismatic. You said,
some of the best performances in the saga in this movie. I agree with you.
Yeah, and then so Rose finds out that he's leaving, and then she immediately tases him.
I love it.
And then
it's so good.
Yeah, like this is an example of like in this movie of like like a strong woman in a position of power over like a guy that feels natural. Like it doesn't feel like manufactured, like Rose is just like this is this is my job. You're trying to leave. I'm gonna tase you now. Like it's like she doesn't lecture him on like his toxic masculinity or some bullshit. It's just like she's just,
it's like you don't need to do that.
I mean, there are some cases, but not necessarily in Star Wars. Maybe
with these established characters, or in a world like this too, that it's already been established that this isn't a thing.
Yeah. So then Finn's trying to explain himself, and then Rose is like, "You're a selfish traitor," which I mean, kind of. And then so Finn tells Rose, they're. Rose is like, we could just jump the light speed, and then Finn's like, well, they could track us through light speed, and then Rose is like, wait, what? And then they form a plan, and then they're talking to Poe about it, and then they tell him what they found out, and then this is an interesting line that I'd never noticed until now. Poe's like, "How did you two meet?" And then I think it's either Finn or Rose that says luck, and then Poe's like, "Good luck or bad luck," and then they're like, "We're not sure yet." And it's like
That's a good line. Yeah.
it makes you wonder if like luck and the Force are kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I like it. It's a good point. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so then okay, here's a knock against Poe that I've always had. People are like, "Oh, Holdo's, she's rude to Poe, she doesn't tell him anything." Well, Poe here finds out critical information that maybe no one else knows. And C-3PO specifically like, "Are you going to tell Vice Admiral Holdo?" And then Poe's like, "It's a need to know plan," and she doesn't. So Poe,
I love that. I'm sorry. I mean,
Poe's also kind of
love
not
Poe in this.
being a team player either, because he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to tell her." Why? Like, I mean,
you're right, but they put him in this position.
that's the beauty of it, where it's like I understand why he did that, but like I feel like it's kind of that Last of Us Part 2 thing, where it's like certain things that happened to the characters in that game are kind of their fault. Kind of.
Yeah.
Not entirely.
Well,
but
and I like it because they double down, at least in this movie, they do double down on characters being flawed.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing to see flawed Star Wars characters, because aside from the prequels, that's never really been the thing.
It's just gotta make sense within the their character development. Like, that's why it's so absurd what they did to Poe, because that's not a character flaw for him.
Yeah.
Which they just kind of manufacture it at the beginning of this movie for some reason. But like you're saying, with this instance, I like it a lot because they kind of back him into this corner, and it's a flaw in his character that leads to a good development for him throughout the movie.
Now,
but I get it.
On to another baffling scene in the movie. So they call Maz Kanata.
Oh my! Okay.
Via Skype. They have a Skype call with Maz Kanata, who's like engaged in a union dispute, and then she says, "You do not want to hear about it," which is like, this character only exists to bring up
I can't
interesting
stand this stuff, dude,
and then say, "Oh, but that's not important. That's not important." But like, I want to know what Maz Kanata was doing. Like, I want like a short Disney Plus special about this, and because it's like she's like fighting these dudes, and she's old, and she has a union dispute.
That would have been a better side story than Canto Bight.
We're gonna talk about Canto Bight because I kind of love Canto Bight, but yeah. And then she's like, "Oh, you have to go to Canto Bight and find a master code breaker." This I freaking love this. She says, "Where is it? Oh, you have to find this one guy who can bypass the First Order shields. It's rarefied cracking." Excuse my French, but are you fucking kidding me? There's nobody else who can bypass enemy shields except for this one dude.
You know what this reminds me of?
Like a video game. This is like crappy video game side quest, but way worse.
You're right, and this is one thing I noticed about this that I do want to talk about. This reminds me of Empire Strikes Back with Lando. And one thing I have always said about Canto Bight is that it feels like a great value Bespin sequence.
I mean, that made sense because they had to find refuge. This is just like, you want to do this thing that other people in Star Wars have done things like this? Well, you have to find one specific guy on one specific planet because he's the only one who can help.
That's why I'm saying it's like a great value.
I don't know. It's just terrible. I can't. I've never liked it, and now I just think it's awful. Okay, so I gotta kind of call Finn's intelligence into question here, because the whole reason he's doing this is so Rey can be safe, right? Why does he leave Rey's beacon with Poe instead of bringing it with him? I'll tell you why.
I don't know.
Because that would have allowed Rey and Finn to be together in this movie, and that's clearly not what Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy wanted. That's the answer.
What we're about to get into involving Finn and his whole story in this movie, I think is absolutely terrible, except, for the part where he comes face to face with his, arch enemy. But
yeah. Okay, so Rey and Kylo discover that they can force Skype. Yeah. So, Rey's in her hut, and then
lit.
It's, dude, everything about all their interactions are shot and framed so well. Like, they're just sitting in separate places, and then
it's amazing.
They'll be like, I'll just be like looking, they'll be like, I sent what? And then, you could tell, by the transitions and the editing that they're looking at each other. It's freaking genius, and then Rey immediately shoots her blaster at him, and Kylo's like, ugh. And then she shoots a hole through her hut and into one of the locals' huts, which is funny. And then,
so good.
This, I like that this island has maids, like a species who their whole purpose are just to be maids. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
And then, it's time for Rey and Luke's first lesson. So
before this, I just want to talk about the Force Skype.
Okay.
Because one thing, remember I said it earlier, the bad guys really shine and the Force is prominent. People are like, oh, they're Force Skype. Yes, it's amazing. We see super cool aspects of the Force in this movie that almost unlike any other Star Wars movie. So I think the Force is amazing. And to me, I have this, I wrote this down later. My favorite character in the movie is actually the Force. I think the Force is a character throughout all of Star Wars. It even has developments, and it's mysterious. I love it. And I think that in this movie, the Force is the coolest character. And I think this Force Skype thing is a super cool aspect.
It's like, even people act like this is a new thing, though. But even, aside from Leia and Luke at the end of Empire, Vader calls out to Luke, and Luke hears him. There have been instances in Star Wars, even in the prequels, where this kind of thing happened. There's that scene with Anakin and Padme. Well, that's their ship name. In Revenge of the Sith, where they're looking out separate windows, and it's like they're looking at each other. And Padme's not even Force sensitive, bro. Or was she? I don't know. Find out in Star Wars What If. So then, I love, like I mentioned, Rey being naive. Like, I love that her understanding of what the Force is really basic and rudimentary. Like Luke's like, what do you know about the Force? And Rey's like, it's a power you can use to control people's minds and lift rocks. And then Luke says, this is the first instance of his catchphrase. Funny. Every word of that sentence was wrong, And then, Luke's, and he tells her to reach out, so she closes her eyes and actually reaches out, and then he's like tickling her hands with like leaves, and she's like, I feel something. He's like, yeah, that's the Force. And then he like smacks her hands, and she's like, oh, you wanted me to reach out, like like I love like they gave Rey more character. Like, she feels like a regular person who's stupid sometimes. I don't get how people say that she just feels like a self-insert, gotcha character. All right, so I love how Luke explains the Force. Like, it makes it very mystical, because one of the reasons people didn't like the prequels was the introduction of the Metachlorians, and how it kind of made the Force a little more like scientific as opposed to just being, like a mystical power and stuff.
So I want to say something about that. I have so much to say. This movie, it was so fun studying this movie because it made me go back through all of Star Wars just to examine things. But, dude, that's the hubris of the Jedi, which Luke goes on to say in a few scenes. But that is literally the hubris of the prequel Jedi. They tried to make this scientific explanation for the Force,
that was
which
just
because they thought they were smarter.
In my head, like, how like there are different denominations of like every religion. Like
Yeah.
there's some Jedi who probably see it this way, but Yoda,
Yes.
I don't know if Yoda ever mentioned Metachlorians in the prequels. I could be wrong, but I don't think
I
it's
don't
just
think so.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon who talk about that.
And
Palpatine.
and Mace Windu, I think. But
Like
yeah,
how they like show, you know, like the cycle of the Force, you know, life, death, hot, warmth, coldness, you know, and then, you know, Luke literally says that Force does not belong to the Jedi. To think that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity. Can you feel that? You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
Luke has become incredibly based in his old age.
I like
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
it's
Well,
freaking great.
because you saw him start, like I said before, people don't understand this, and I'm glad we're doing this because people misunderstand Luke as a character and the Last Jedi and in the Star Wars, story. But he starts to become like base, like kind of what you're saying in Return of the Jedi, and it's because he needed to save his father. So okay, we'll get to it, but yeah, finish up what you're this, and then I want to go into it. I don't want to cut you off.
There are just a few more things about this sequence that are actually pretty loaded. You know, it's something I noticed.
Yeah, definitely. It's very this is very.
So then
loaded,
you know, Rey senses the dark side. You know, and then she's like, "I feel something." You know, darkness, and then you know, like at first Luke is just like, "Yeah, there's powerful light and powerful darkness." You know, and then she's like, "It's calling me," and then you know, she starts pulling her consciousness to the dark side. It's like a hole in the island. I get like it kind of looks like a Sarlacc pit a little bit, you know. And then you know Luke senses that, and you know like the ground starts cracking, and you know stuff, and he feels that, and then he's like, you know, Rey, stop, you know. And then I don't understand exactly what happens. It's like she gets hit by a wave and knocked down, but it looks like it's like being rewound. You know, like when you rewind like a DVD.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's trippy looking. I just don't exactly know what happened. And then so peep this. So Luke gets scared by this. He's like, "You went straight to the dark, and you didn't even try to stop yourself. I've only seen this power once before in Ben Solo. It didn't scare me then, but it did now." So I noticed something very interesting about Luke in this movie. So, you know, he's talking to Rey, you know, like, "Oh, you know, the Jedi don't have a monopoly on the Force, on the light side. If the Jedi die, the light lives on." And then, but Rey senses the dark side. Luke still gets scared, and he sees that as a bad thing because Rey didn't try and stop herself like he stopped himself. So, you know, I look at it as like anytime somebody, you know, leaves like a toxic, you know, environment, whether it's like a relationship, you know, a toxic religious system, toxic thoughts about yourself or other people, that stuff still sticks with you and it lingers with you.
It's PTSD.
So yeah, so Luke, you know, he's acted like, you know, he's broken free from the Jedis and started to see things in a more level-headed and nuanced way. But he's presented with the power of the dark side through, you know, somebody that he's trying to teach, and he's right back to being a dogmatic Jedi. He's like, "You went to the dark side, you didn't try to stop yourself. I want nothing to do with this." And that is so freaking interesting, in my opinion.
Okay, at this point in the movie, I like it because of what you just said. It is literally PTSD. It's character development. He has to learn, you know, whatever. I get it. So let me just go through this. Mark Hamill is Luke, hands down. He knows the character. He is Luke. His explanation of the Force and his training in this movie is almost peak Luke. Like when he's training Rey and kind of teasing her, it's funny. It is Star Wars. It is like peak Luke Skywalker. I love it.
Yeah.
Star Wars should be fun with deep lessons for anyone to learn from, and they do this very well. She is describing the light side and the dark side, and then the balance in the middle. This is the lesson. The Force does not belong to the Jedi. To think that if the Jedi die, the Force dies is vanity. Luke is teaching this to her, and I love it. She feels the call to the dark, like you said, and then Luke has this PTSD moment, and he says, "I've only seen this raw strength once before." He's referring to Kylo, to Ben. What about Vader? Or what about the Emperor? This is where, okay, the story doesn't fit in the saga. it's
Yeah,
obvious
because
it
he
ignores
specifically mentions
established
Ben
lore.
Solo, but it's like he should have just said,
Yes,
I don't know,
Vader,
something else. Like
the Emperor.
it shouldn't have been like I've only seen this power once before. It's like I've experienced this power way too many times,
Yes,
and I'm not going to do it this
yes,
time.
and that's why I guess writer director is awesome, love it, but he needs to understand Star Wars more. Ryan Johnson,
No,
talking about you,
I
buddy.
think in some ways he
He
really
does.
does, and
He
then in
does.
some ways
He
maybe not so
does.
much.
But no, he really does because I love the comparisons where he does things shot for shot. He does get it, but in a sense he doesn't. And the story doesn't fit in the saga. It obviously ignores established
Because
lore
I
of
mean,
characters in
yeah,
service of adapting new ones. Shouldn't be like that. Not even in this trilogy, but in the movie, and sometimes not even for the sake of the entire movie, but even scene by scene. But for what?
yeah.
That's
So,
that's what I got to say
and
about that. So,
I just thought of this too. Like following Luke's logic, that makes Ben Solo more powerful than Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader.
yes,
There
yes.
ain't no way in hell. I'm sorry. No, absolutely not. He's powerful, but bro, come on. What? He has more of the dark side than those two. Than Palpatine?
Yeah.
Palpatine was the most evil bastard in this entire universe. No, come on.
Now let's just say that's not a great
Aside from
line from
Plagueis,
Luke.
probably, but
They could have reworked that line, that dialogue more because it's bad dialogue. It really is. Because in their next interaction after this whole side story stuff with I guess Canto Bite, not Bespin. Sorry. They do talk about Vader and Palpatine, so let's just keep moving.
yeah. Okay, so the Finn and Co start the mission. That's really the only thing I have. They fly to Canto Bite, whatever. And then we cut back to Octo, the second Force Skype call between Rey and Kylo Ren. Now the Porgs are on the Millennium
Force Skype
Falcon,
is lit.
so there's a important subplot of Chewie becoming friends with Porgs, and that'll be crucial.
Why
in a
are you
scene
on
that
this?
is it's just funny. It's just funny to
Okay.
point out.
Okay. All right. I
I want
love
to
it.
spin off just about like a National Geographic special about porgs, like they're real. But
There's so much happening in this movie, and you're like, Chewbacca's relationship with the Porg is developing.
you can just talk about that. Screw everything. No, and
It's more interesting than
this is
Canto Bite.
yeah. Okay, so this is another in the Force Awakens episode. I mentioned Rey, seeing how green Takodana was and just being like amazed by it because she, lived her whole life in the desert. I love this little detail of it's raining on Octo and like she reaches out and like she touches the rain and smiles. Like
Yeah.
I love that she's just appreciative of really small things. I just think that makes her endearing and a really relatable character. Um and then so Rey and Kylo Ren get connected again. And then I think he's like, why is the Force connecting us? Like he's
Yeah. I like that they don't understand.
Yeah, they don't get it. They're
It's
just
revealed
like,
later.
what the heck?
Yeah.
And then I love how Kylo Ren cracks Rey's illusion a little bit. Because like she thinks everything is black and white, simple. She's like, I found Luke and he's gonna come back and we're gonna beat you up and you're gonna lose. And then Kylo's like, nah. And then Rey's like, nah, shut up, you're lying. I don't want to hear you. La 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 la. Like it's a great dynamic that they have. Because she. She's like naive and hasn't she can't imagine that Luke could possibly not be that great of a person. He's like, well, he's a hero, of course. The Jedi and the Force.
Well, he does kind of lie to her here, and she kind of believes
he tells her that Luke just like straight up tried to murk him. I'm gonna get into that later because the fans really pissed me off with this. I'm exaggerating, and then one of my favorite moments that I never realized it's really deep, but Rey's like, you're a monster. And then Kylo says, yes, I am. Now, for the longest time, I thought this was just Kylo being like, yeah, I'm a monster. What are you going to do about it? But if you look at Adam Driver's face, shout out to him. This is his best performance in the trilogy, in my opinion. he kind of looks a little sad when he says he's a monster. So, that on one hand, he's acknowledging, that he is a monster, that, he's, evil and he's, a Sith and stuff now. But he also has that part of him, in my opinion, and how I viewed it, was like he was also kind of upset, like, this is who I am now, and this is, the only person I'm gonna be for the rest of my life. So like Rey calling him that kind of splits him, where he's like trying to just pass it off, like, yeah, I'm a monster, yeah, but he's also, just sad. He's
so much
sad
like Anakin.
dude. Yeah, dude, exactly.
Yeah.
He's exactly like his grandpappy. Okay, so we get the Canto Bite, and now as far as the actual planet Canto Bite, I love it. I love it. One of my favorite Star Wars planets. I love the freaking
right here,
space
the design
yachts,
is super
the casinos, the people wearing suits and stuff, the slot machine, it's a perfect, it's like really the only time this movie does this kind of thing that it's trying to do, where it takes a modern thing in our world and it puts it in Star Wars, but it makes it a Star Wars version of that instead of just that in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like, it feels like, like, I feel like, people in Star Wars that are rich would hang out here. Of course. They would have drinks and wild parties and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I do have something to say about it. I think the side story, like the actual story itself, is terrible. I think that it's terrible side story of Canto Bite, but the design is cool. The world is cool, like you just said. I think you stated it perfectly. But it's irrelevant, especially by adapting the free the slave horses storyline into it. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. It seems just like can we get back to like the story?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of this? It seems meaningless. It's an unnecessary subversion of expectations.
Of the movie trying to have a little too many themes.
Yeah,
which I think is too many. A problem.
Now, the one thing that this does well that they end up ruining later on is Finn and Rose. I think that they're great together, and I think it actually would have been super cool if those two would have actually ended up together, or like at the end of the movie, one of them would have sacrificed himself to save the other instead of what we actually got. Because I think their chemistry together.
Yeah,
awesome.
But
that might be a hot take. I don't know.
I don't know if you've seen their screen test together, but they had a really good rapport.
I bet it was awesome. Yeah.
So this is a part of the movie, like, again, one of those moments in the movie that feel like it's manufactured conflict, because we find out that they parked their ship illegally, or their speeder illegally, somewhere that now. I don't know. If I'm Finn, I'm like, my number one concern is going on this quest and succeeding to make sure that one of the two friends I have in my life is going to be safe. So I get to this planet that I have to find somebody to ensure that this plan works, because he's the only guy in the whole galaxy who can do this shit for some stupid manufactured reason. So maybe I should really take my time and make sure I don't park my speeder or ship, whatever, somewhere illegal and draw attention to myself and do anything that could compromise this trip. Right? That's what you would think. If you were Finn, that's what you would do. If I was Finn, that's what I would do. But for some reason, him and Rose is, up until this point, has seemed like a smart, level-headed character with common sense. But they do this thing just so they can get caught and thrown in a jail cell where they meet DJ. And it's just I don't understand why this is why like, I could see if they were kids, they wouldn't think about that kind of thing and they would just be reckless. But like, their characters weren't established to be dumb, so I don't understand why they're acting dumb all of a sudden.
They actually, and they actually don't even introduce DJ yet. But yeah, I know.
No, but I mean, that's later.
Like, why? Yeah, why?
I don't know. Whatever.
There is a Broom Boy cameo. The Broom Boy, there's a cameo.
So okay, here's another. Like, they go in the casino to try and find the guy, and Finn's like, "This place is great," and Rose is like, "Okay, buddy, all right." you know, and then they go
I
on a balcony, and then, you know, like, there's this moment, you know, where he's like, this place is great. I don't know why you hate it so much. And then Rose says, look closer. And it pans to a telescope, and Finn looks through the telescope. Like, it's not like, you know, because like usually if someone says look closer, like it's a metaphor, like actually think, you know, and stop just looking at everything on the surface.
he literally looks closer.
Yeah, and then, you know, he sees like, you know, like the boys, like the stable boys, like being abused and stuff, and then Rose explains that, you know, now I have a problem with this and a praise about this. So you know, because one of my problems with Star Wars is that aside from Solo, we've never seen like the effects of like crime and how it affects like underprivileged people. You know what I mean? Because, you know, there's crime syndicates in Star Wars, but we don't really see how that affects anybody, you know, like regular people. So I like here how like Rose points out that, you know, the people here made their money off of war profiteering. And, you know, that causes Finn to like be like,
I
oh,
like
that, you
that.
know, like
Yeah.
that's not something
Well,
explored in Star Wars, and I don't understand because it's called Star Wars, but they only focus on like one part of the war instead of, you know, because the key part of war that people don't think about sometimes is how it affects everyday people.
And it was the Resistance and the First Order both buying weapons from, like, they sold them
Yeah.
to both. I love that aspect.
Yeah, that's
of it,
interesting.
yeah.
But again, with the dialogue being really weird, Rose says there's only one business that'll make you this rich. And it's like, so every single person on Canto Bight, whoever comes here, is doing the exact same thing. That kind of makes the galaxy feel really small. If the only people
that's
who
the
have
Ryan
the
Johnson
money
effect. I like
to
how you said
afford
that,
that is they have to be doing this one thing. Like, yeah, I mean, war profiteering will make you a lot more money than like selling drugs or whatever. But like, I don't know. I kind of just like the idea that Canto Bights, where rich people from everywhere, from all occupations, go to hang out. But it's like, oh no, everyone here, they're just profiting from war. Like, that's a pretty big leap in logic, in my opinion. Like, it's kind of like it takes something interesting and then it kind of makes it reductive, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just sidetracks. It's the pacing right here was just off.
Okay, so we cut back to Rey, who's she starts like training with her staff, and then she pulls out the lightsaber. And I found this interesting because she never does this again. She holds it underhanded. I don't know if like
I have a lot to say about this.
Underhanded, you would know because you're familiar with like fighting stances and stuff. But like, is the underhanded way of fighting like? Does that like symbolize anything or something? Or
No, not really. It's no, not really. It was cool seeing it.
I was kind of hoping that would have like there would have been like a deeper meaning to it. But
so people actually had a theory way back when, before this movie, that Rey was related to Palpatine because of the way she fights with her saber. She stabs. She does a lot of like lunging and stabbing, and that's how Palpatine fights, which turns out that they were right. But no, in terms of underhand, no. I do have something to say about this real quick. If you're done.
What, like the training section in general?
Yes.
Well, no. So then, you know, she sees Luke watching her, and then she gets bashful, and then she slices a rock, and then, you know, that's when they go to start their second lesson. So, is that what you want to talk about? Okay.
Yeah. So Rey's staff is super cool. We've seen a staff in Star Wars before with Darth Maul.
It's almost like that should have been modified to be her lightsaber or something. It's almost like there's a draft of the third movie that never got made where that happens. And
almost. Now, what I want to say is, why give her someone else's lightsaber when she could have made her own?
I genuinely hate it, actually. It's terrible.
Or she could have made her own, like, saber staff.
Thing that we've never seen before.
Oh, yeah. Like lightsabers, characters aren't made in Star Wars. They're stolen. So it's just another thing where instead of making it original, let's just copy and paste or steal this idea.
That's one of my biggest problems with these movies, is that by the end, that's exactly what they do. Like,
Yep.
it's like
So-
the Walmart version of stuff we've seen before.
Yeah, and that's like, we don't want that. We want to see new things. But
Exactly.
yeah. So this second lesson, go through it all the way, and then when you're done, I'll go.
Let me see.
Because there's
Okay.
a lot here.
I actually, when I saw this for the first time, this is the moment where I started to go, yo, Ryan Johnson kind of knows what he's talking about. This is interesting. So, you know,
Actually,
Luke,
yeah.
you know, he starts, you know, he's critiquing the Jedi. He's like, you know, over the years, the Jedi have become romanticized, deified. But if you strip away their deeds and, you know, their hubris, the legacy of the Jedi's failure, because, you know, at the height of their power, they let Darth Sidious wipe them out, you know, because they were blinded. And then, you know, that's another.
It's almost like he understands
another
it.
example of
Yeah.
Ryan Johnson being meta in this movie and his writing in general, you know, because that's what fans
Now,
were
let me ask you
saying
something.
for a long time, and he just like put some of that in the movie.
So is that him just trying to be meta, or do you think he legitimately understands this
No, I
about
think-
these characters?
I think one of the things I think Ryan Johnson did well in this movie is that he took like commentary on the franchise as a whole and used, and he made
Inserted
that part
it,
of
yeah.
Luke's character and his philosophies.
Okay.
If that makes sense, like, you know, like some fans are like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, the Jedi suck, you know, because in the prequels, you know, they did this and that, and, you know, and that. I feel like Ryan Johnson was like, what if Luke thought the same thing you people did? And then he made that part of the story. You know, so I think, you know, like Rey, her rebuttal is that, oh, you know, you saw darkness in your father and you saw that he could be turned because, you know, you saw he had conflict. So, you know, another example of Rey representing the fans, you know, she's inspired by Luke redeeming Vader, like we the fans are every time, you know, we watch that moment. I think that's
love
interesting.
This. Yes.
And then, you know, the story of how he failed Ben Solo, which is he went to confront Ben. I think this is actually the first instance of it, because then it's Luke, Kylo, and then Luke kind of so he went to confront Kylo Ren, and then he pulled his lightsaber. No, he force pulled his hut down, and then, you know, that's when he killed some of his students or whatever. That's the first version of the story. And then I freaking love what Rey says here. You didn't fail Kylo. Kylo failed you.
Oh man, do I have stuff to say?
Optimism is infectious. It really is. Like she, you know, like she's like, you know, really naive and stuff at times, but like I love that she's
supposed to be.
She's
kind
of
supposed
like
to be
Superman in a way, where it's like, you know, like she believes in, you know, like truth and justice, no matter how things look. Like that's still her outlook, you know. Like
that's
people
very
challenge
reminiscent
that,
of
but
Luke.
in the end, that's what she's gonna stick to. You know, she has like strong principles and stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too. I think it's very reminiscent of Luke.
Yeah,
You want me to go now? So, like you said, Luke says the legacy of the Jedi is failure, hubris. Then Rey says, what about the Jedi who saved him? Talking about Vader. He saw the conflict in him that he could be turned back. Then Luke says, and I became a legend.
I
think
forgot
that's
about
nice.
that part. Yeah.
That's self reflection.
He became a legend, you know. Oh no, I think
I love
wait.
it.
Oh no, that's later. Okay, never mind.
So Luke says, I became a legend. There was balance for many years. Then I saw Ben with that mighty Skywalker blood. In my hubris, I thought I could train him, and then they show the his training temple. And he says, I wasn't supposed to fail because I am Luke Skywalker. It's almost like he's talking about a certain group of people that think this.
Yeah.
So, the Skywalker, the legend, but I did fail. I like this because a lot of people don't think that, you know, Luke failed or that he could fail. And I like that they just show that even Luke admits, he's like, yeah, I was a legend and I still failed.
And then I feel like too, that's you know, because like a lot of the expanded media and stuff has Luke, you know, starting his own Jedi temple and training people and stuff. And then, you know, like they love that, you know, like the fans love that. That's what they wanted to see. But then in the same breath, they're also critical of, you know, Luke, you know, like failing and stuff like that. But it's like, dude, the movie's literally telling you that by Luke training other Jedi, that would throw off the balance. So it's like fans obviously wouldn't like the best thing for Luke to do after Return of the Jedi was just to, you know, just chill and just live a
Just
regular
do
life.
nothing.
But he didn't do
Yeah.
that because the fans wanted him to become a Jedi, you know, teacher, a Jedi master, and train people. And look at what happened because of what other people wanted him to do. It's
So,
almost like
I have
other
a lot
people
to
don't always know what they're talking about.
Okay, so I have a lot to say here. I'm going to go on a rant. I'm going to subvert your expectations, and then I'm going to turn it around. Okay? Almost like a director we know. So, in my hubris, I thought I could train him. I wasn't supposed to fail because I'm Luke Skywalker, the legend, but I failed. Rey says, the galaxy may need a legend. I need someone to show me my place in all of this. Here is where they get it wrong. And Rey is wrong with what she says next, and you said it. She says you didn't fail Kylo. Kylo failed you. No, Luke did fail Kylo. That's the whole point.
I mean,
at this point,
I
though,
like that's just her perspective. But yeah.
So no, that's
Yeah.
what. So okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Follow along with me. Follow along with me. Rey is supposed to think this at this point because Luke was kind of not telling her the entire, situation. So this is where this is wrong. Is the fact that Luke did fail Kylo, and I want to bring up Mr. Miyagi. He says there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher.
Oh,
and Mr. Miyagi is regarded as one of cinema's greatest teachers alongside Obi-Wan and Yoda. Even Obi-Wan says this to Anakin in episode 3. He says, I have failed you. He takes accountability.
I'm going to bring that up later because there's a powerful parallel. But yeah.
Yes. So I'm saying this for a reason. And we know from Duel of the Fates, we went into that before, that it was the fact that it was Obi-Wan's training over Qui-Gon's that led to Anakin's fall to the dark side. Just like it was Luke's fault for leading Kylo to the dark side. It has nothing to do with Kylo's raw strength being too powerful. It was the failure of the Master. Here's the thing. This makes sense, and it's not bad in and of itself. Luke is not perfect. And we see that here. And I actually really like this about the story. A lot of people have issues with this, but it makes sense. But here is why the majority of Star Wars fans do not like this. It's already been done. And if there's any Jedi that learn from these specific mistakes, it is Luke Skywalker. We have seen this same character development in the original trilogy. We've seen this same character development in the prequel trilogy. It's not necessarily that it's bad, but it's like the writers never truly watched Star Wars through the whole way. Seeing him make the same mistakes feel cheap and feels like, we've seen it before. They actually do make the same mistakes that the Jedi made in the prequels. Luke didn't learn from the original trilogy, so now he enters into The Last Jedi having backtracked until they undo all of this in the next movie. It's not like Luke's character in this movie. Luke always went against the status quo of mentorships. But in this, he is a copy and paste mentor. Copy and paste Obi-Wan. Nothing specifically Luke Skywalker about him in any of this. So that's my rant on that.
I actually just thought of something that is kind of a rebuttal to that, but that's for the final confrontation. But I can't wait to talk about it. Okay. Well, okay, so flashback to Canto Bight. Rey and Finn are in jail because they're stupid all of a sudden. So here we introduced to DJ, played by Benicio del Toro. Now up front, I like DJ. He's an interesting character. He's kind of like a scoundrel, but he's kind of not like other characters of that type we've seen in Star Wars. And one thing that stuck out to me is that, he's, a lot of people talk about like representation in movies, like race, gender, sexuality, whatever. But like, you never see people in movies. I mean, anytime you see people in movies that like have a speech impediment, they're always treated as a joke, as a punchline, as like a weak idiot. And so as somebody who does stutter myself, I loved seeing a character who stutters but is still, like sly, confident, and just like a chill dude. Like, like he walks his own path. He knows who he is. Like he doesn't let anything bring him down. So that's like a really small thing, but I love Ryan Johnson for that, and I'm thankful that he did that because it was just really nice to see. Like I felt seen by that character.
So you talk about the introduction of Benicio del Toro as DJ. Let's back up just a little bit.
Oh, did I miss something?
Well, it's just some small things I actually want to talk about. So they cut to the First Order chasing the Resistance, and you get to see Hux. They start, you get to see Hux and in a scene, and then you get to see the Resistance in a scene. So what I want to talk about real quick is the medical frigates that start to run out of fuel. It's something very small. You might not even have it on there.
Is it like a brief transition? Because like if it was
small,
like a short scene, I probably wouldn't have even bothered to write anything down.
Yeah, it's about 55 minutes in, but it's just the whole aspect of them finally talking about fuel in Star Wars. Because I don't know if you remember at the time, a lot of people were complaining
and then,
about
like,
the fact
in Attack of the Clones, Anakin literally tells the stormtroopers to aim for the fuel cells. How stupid are these people?
I'm so glad you brought up...
I'm sorry. Come on.
I'm so glad you brought up the prequel trilogy. Because I have on here, medical frigate is out of fuel. Who cares about fuel in Star Wars? It's the same complaint as there's politics in the prequel trilogy. I thought it was interesting to see that they're talking about fuel. I mean, it's just like insight into the world building. I thought it was interesting to see that aspect, but I guess it does drag down the movie because it could be a legitimate complaint like in the prequels, but I like that. But that's just world building for me. I think it was cool because like you said, they talk about it in the prequels. It's just part of the world.
What do people think these ships ran on? I mean, like, come on.
And because Hux, if you remember, Hux is saying, "Oh, they're running out of fuel." Yeah. And I just want to point out, Hux's acting is top notch. His the actor's portrayal, I cannot remember
Domhnall
his name.
Gleeson.
Yeah, he is awesome.
Yeah, he really chews it up.
Yeah. Now we're an hour into the movie, and we're 2 hours into our retrospective. But we're an hour in, and I wrote down my thoughts. Poe's acting is great, and his character is reduced to nothing. Akbar died off screen. Holdo is...
yeah. They just say...
Holdo is unbearable. There's a casino side mission. Luke has been castrated in front of our eyes. But wow, Kylo is awesome. Then to top it off, Benicio del Toro. Okay.
Put on a t-shirt because I'm hot. Hold on.
Okay. While Tony is gone, I want to say a few things. I have wrote down here in my thing. Scene for scene, this movie is worse than I remember. And I used to be lukewarm on it, pun intended. But now it's definitely the bottom. It's just a bad movie overall, with some really cool moments of action and the Force. Just terrible character moments in an awful story. Not much uniquely Star Wars about this, aside from the look of it and the depiction of the Force. Feels like a live-action Star Wars Visions episode. And there's a place for that, but in my headcanon, its place is not in the Skywalker saga, if that makes sense. Standalone, there is a lot to get from this and a lot of relatable characters, especially Luke and Rey. It's a shame they didn't create something original for the sequel trilogy and only half followed what George wanted instead of either fully following it or fully creating their own thing. Either be in or out. But they disrespected so many fans and characters by not wanting to commit to something. Talking about Rian Johnson. Or even commit to taking chances. Talking about Colin Trevorrow. It feels like too much of a mess. It doesn't feel like it's in a galaxy far, far away. It feels like it's from a writer's room not so far away because the agenda here is blatant. And to top it off, those horse creatures are the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life. So
I don't think
there's my rant.
think Colin Trevorrow and taking chances should be in the same sentence ever when it comes to filmmaking. But
Wow, that's okay.
Anyway, so
You're right.
okay, so back to they're in the cell. They're talking, and then DJ's like, "Hey, can you keep it down?" And then they're like, "Who the hell's this dude?" And then
I hated this.
he's basically like, "Yeah, I could help you, break into the First Order ship. Me and First Order Codage, we go way back." And it's like, it kind of makes him interesting because it makes you wonder, like, how did this dude, like, he has history of like breaking into First Order ships, I guess. Like, that's interesting, but also because it's also kind of dumb though, because like Maz said, "Oh, you have to find this like master code breaker," and then they just meet like some random criminal who can do the same thing. But I kind of like it because it's like one of the themes of this movie is like changing your perspective. So like it's like you wouldn't expect some like random thug to be able to help them with this thing, but he ends up helping them with this.
Subvert your expectations.
Yeah. So then I have here, I don't get how he escaped the cell. So like he like takes out a card or something, and like he like puts it in his teeth or something, and then he puts it in the thing outside the door, and then it beeps, and then the door opens, and then what happened?
Just give him a toothpick and some bubble gum. He'll break out.
No, but it's like electronic, but like like what? I don't know.
I don't know.
So then there's like a fight scene, and he runs into BB-8, and then he has like
he's sitting there like this, and Bob BB-8's just like dousing him.
And he's like, "What's your story, Roundy?" And like they like kind of have a dynamic in this movie, which is fun. And then so they have a chase through Canto Bight. They're tearing everything up. They're riding the fathiers, I think they're called, which are like
the ugliest creatures I've ever seen in my life.
I don't think they're as ugly as much as they're just unoriginal. Like they're just like let's just
they don't look ugly until you look at the
cross it with a horse. It's like
yes,
that's not a new creature. That's just
it's so
you
ugly.
just took two things. Cool. Pat yourselves on the back, I guess. And then they I kind of skipped over this because it's not that interesting. They run into the stable kids, and then they're like, "Wait, we're with the Resistance." And then the one kid's like, "Oh, you're with the Resistance. I'll let you out." And then, they chase, and then they get to a cliff, and then, they're like kind of surrounded. And then Finn says to Rose, "It was worth it though to tear up that town and make them hurt." And it's like, bro, they have the money to just rebuild. You didn't really do.
Yeah,
you
that
just
really
inconvenienced them for like a few days, maybe. And then
they really hurt
and then they like set the fathers free, but where are they gonna go?
Back to captivity.
They can't leave the island unless they
know
how to
It's
swim.
like one of those things where they were better. They were better off in captivity. So them setting them loose actually just
and then like the ship pulls up, and then you see BB-8, and then it's funny. Finn's like, "Are you flying that thing?" And then no, it's DJ. They subvert your expectations. And then he's like, "Hey, do you need a lift?" And then they leave with DJ, and then it's
all right. I'm glad we're done.
So we
with
go
this
back
part.
to Luke, who's tapping into the Force for the first time in a long time, and he senses Leia senses him, and it's a great moment of them reconnecting.
It is.
And then we have the third Skype Force call between Rey and Kylo Ren, and I freaking love how this starts. Because Rey's like, "I'm like, I wish this would stop happening" or something, and then Kylo, in the most like regular that we've ever heard him, is just like, "Yeah, me too." Like he's just so like he's not like like being like aggressive and mad. He's just like, "Yeah, I feel like." It's just a small thing that I love. And then I have here.
So was the Force cave before this or no?
No, that's after. And then
okay.
I wrote here, "Thick boy." Kylo Ren
Ben
is a
Swallow.
thick boy. He's thick. And then like Rey's like, do you have a towel or something you could put on? Which I don't know. I don't feel like she would say that to him because like she still hates him. Like and like she's being kind of way too casual here. A little bit. I mean, like she wasn't expecting to see him shirtless, but like, why would that even register in her mind when
She said something like a cowl. She said, "Do you have a cowl?"
a towel or something you
No,
could put
she
on?
says something else.
Yeah.
She
And then
says,
like
something.
Kylo Ren
It's just
doesn't
funny.
even respond. It's like he's like,
He
you
just
don't want to
completely ignores it.
see me shirtless? Well, screw you. Now, just because you said that, I'm not gonna put a shirt on.
If you notice, it is actually pretty cool. Because I was wondering in this moment, I'm like, why did they do this? He is kind of showing her the scar that she caused him. Because if you see it, it does. The scar doesn't just run down his face like Anakin. It actually runs all the way across his chest.
I don't know if I noticed.
Yeah, it was a cool detail because I noticed in the second time they forced Skype, the scar is actually gone. I think it was an oversight in the movie. But in this third time, the scar is like a lot bigger. You can see it, and it actually runs across his chest. So yeah.
And then I freaking love that. Ray asks, "Why did you hate your father?" And then he says, "I didn't hate him." Depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he still loved his dad, which is why he hesitated to kill him. Oh no! Wait, no. Actually, you know, like she starts to ask him that, and then breaks, and then he's like, "No, say it." You know, like he's like,
yep.
Egging
I
her
love
on,
it,
like,
dude.
No, say it. You want to ask me why I killed my dad? Oh yeah, ask. Oh what? You're not feeling so big and bad now, huh? Are you scared? You know, I just
His character's awesome, dude.
You know, Ray's. I love what he says. You know, your parents threw you away like garbage, but you can't stop needing them. It's your biggest weakness. That's why you look for them in everyone, in Han, in Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
You know, like, so it's
so
almost
good.
like they're not that different. And I know that's such a cliche, but here I think it's better than some other things that have this same theme.
You couldn't live with the failures. And where did it bring you? Back to me.
You know, that's a good summation of her arc in this trilogy, is that like she can't be like, she has to find a family. Like she can't, you know, she like,
oh wow, it's almost like we're about to talk
like
about
looking
that.
forward. She's like, oh no, but Han will be my dad. No, Luke will be my dad.
And then she goes to the cave. Show me my parents.
And then we get the second version of the story, which is Luke walked into Kylo's tent and tried to murk him, and Kylo was just defending himself, you know, from that asshole Luke Skywalker. And then he says, "Let the past die. Kill it if you have to." And I have to go on a mini rant about this because fans are stupid. When fans are criticizing this movie, they're like, "Oh, you know, Rian Johnson, you know, he doesn't respect Star Wars. That's why, you know, he had Kylo Ren say, 'Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.'" That was Rian Johnson saying, like, you know, I don't care about, you know, the past of this trilogy, and I don't have reverence for it. Dude, that's being said by the bad guy. The guy we're supposed to disagree with, and who the protagonist is going up against. Why would you think that Rian Johnson would have a villain give a thesis statement about how he feels about the franchise and be... It's like they don't want... what? How? Unbelievable. I don't even know what to say. I don't know. And then I love that, like, he says, "Let the past die." What does Rey do? The exact opposite. She goes to the cave to find answers to her past. You know. So
I have very quickly about this. I don't have a lot because the Force Cave or whatever made no sense in any context. What was that? That's all I have to say about it. What was it? I mean,
what was...
Explain it to me. What was
on Dagobah, Luke walks into like a tree and it's like a thing, and then he sees Vader, and then he like chops his head off. So like,
and what's he see? He sees himself.
What was that? I was just a random thing that happened too. I mean, I don't know.
You're right, but here's the thing. That obviously, like, he sees that he's going to be turned to Vader. That's the foreshadowing. Is like, oh wow, Luke is going to be turned into Vader, and obviously join me. That's what Vader wants at the end of the movie, but he doesn't. Anyways, in this, she sees
Now,
herself
I'll tell you.
like an
I'll
infinite
tell you
amount of
what it is.
times.
Oh, that
Okay.
I feel like that was just like the mirror, because like she was like the thing was like a mirror. I don't know. I feel like that was just, maybe it was like a psychedelic effect. I do like the echo where like she like snaps her fingers, and then it's like
Yeah.
an echo of just snaps.
But she says, "Show me my
Yeah,
family. Show me
no.
my parents."
She
or whatever.
looks into the glass and show me my
Yeah.
parents, and they're two shadows merge into one. That one ends up being Rey. You know why that happened? And Rise of Skywalker
Why?
ruins this, and I hate it. Rey's her parents. Her parents, in the context of this movie, threw her away. They were just these drunk people. They didn't care about her. Rey raised herself, raised
Yeah.
her mother and her father. That's why she saw herself, because she's all she needs, and she needs to learn that. And it took her this long to finally learn that.
That would have been so much better than what they did. Yeah, I agree. That would have been so much better than what they did.
So then, we hear like Rey starting to talk, and then we find out she's talking to Kylo Ren. And then, I forget what Kylo Ren says exactly, but then she says to him, "You're not alone." Oh yeah, I know what it is. Rey's like, "I thought I'd feel peace, but I just felt so." And then Kylo's like, "Alone" or something, and then she's like, "You're not alone." And then I wrote here, they're two lost souls at the midpoint of their journeys, which happen to be each other. They've been so isolated that the only way that they feel to connect to each other isn't by holding hands. It's just by touching the tips of their fingers. And like some
I
people
love this
like
because
made fun of that for some, but like like they've had no like physical contact with people really. So like that's just their really awkward way of making a connection. I like it. Like it's not like like they would like hug or hold hands. No, they barely even hold hands.
Snoke actually explains this whole thing right here really good in a little bit. But to talk about this specific instance, what I have is after this cave scene halfway through the movie, I think it actually gets much better, like in terms of a movie. What was a very slow and almost meaningless movie thus far turns around, and we get some great Star Wars. This first half of subverting expectations was just too much. It did not feel like they continued the serialized nature of Star Wars, but turned it into a blockbuster clone. And then I have Force Skype is cool. So that's just what I have up to this point. And then I do want to talk about this part where they basically touch with the Force Skypes and from here on out, because we get the introduction of an amazing character that pretty much saves the movie, in my opinion. But you can go ahead and from here on out.
For some reason, I can't think of who that is. I don't know why. And I've watched this movie like so. Okay, so Luke is exposed, and yeah, he walks in on them, which is it's kind of like a parallel to like a parent walking in on their kid, having sex. Yeah, I
And
thought
they very much
that
did
was
it like that.
It was like
for some
framed like
reason.
that, and I don't know. I personally kind of like that choice. First, I don't know. Like it makes it feel like it feels authentic. I don't know, just like feels like a thing that. How? By the way, like how old are they supposed to be? Are they like young adults or like? I guess, right?
I would assume in this like mid to late 20s.
Okay, so then Luke tells Rey to leave. And then I liked it. Luke's finally like faced with like to tell the truth of what happened with Kylo Ren. So they like have a fight. Like Rey summons like antenna thing. Luke summons a stick, and they have like a short fight. And then I noticed that Luke is fighting with one hand. Who else fought with one hand? Vader. When he fought Vader.
Yeah, that's true.
and
Okay, that's
technically
cool.
Luke wins this fight because he knocks away Rey's weapon. But then Rey kind of cheats because she summons her lightsaber and then she backs him into a corner, and she like makes him like fall down. So she got the best of him,
So
but she
okay,
kind of played
yeah,
dirty a little bit. I think that's interesting. Like 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 she's like a renegade. Like Luke's still like playing by the rules and fighting fair because he's still a good person at the end of the day. But like Rey, like she gets the upper hand by kind of not fighting fair. I thought that was
that's very
interesting.
interesting. I never considered that. What I have is Luke doubles down on being a hermit who almost turned on Rey, destroys her rock house, and then walks away. She then comes, hits him over the head, which is weird, and then proceeds to actually beat him in a fight.
Yeah, I don't know why
Like
she
I said,
just
weird
smacked him
character
over the
moments.
head.
Yeah, it's just like weird character moments. So yeah,
And then
go ahead.
we get the third and true version of the
Yes.
story, and I want to talk about this in depth a little bit. So Luke reveals, he walked into Kylo Ren's hut, and then he like looked into his mind, and then said that he would bring about the end of everybody I cared about. Which I wonder exactly what that means. It's not like we ever find out, so screw me for being curious. I guess I should know better when it comes to this trilogy to actually be curious about plot points that they set up. Like that's a flaw that I have. But so he for like a second he thinks about just ending him right there. So he ignites his lightsaber, and then he says it vanished like a fleeting shadow, and I was left with nothing but shame. Check this out. And the last thing I saw were the eyes of a scared boy whose master had failed him. Who does that remind you of? Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan.
Anakin being scared looking at Obi-Wan, and what does Obi-Wan say? I failed you, Anakin.
Yeah.
Luke has become, against his own will, the failure
Obi-Wan.
of a Jedi Master that he never wanted to be. And we're gonna get into this in depth for a little bit, but I just love the tragedy of that. Like Luke became what he feared the most. I know a lot of people hated it, and some people, just real quick, people were like, "Oh, Luke would never try to kill Kylo Ren." He didn't try to kill Kylo Ren. He didn't. He just plain as day did not try to kill him. He thought about it for a second, and then he was immediately like, "I'm not gonna do that. What the hell? Why did I?" He didn't try and kill him. I don't know why people keep saying that. It's fine to hate this movie, but stop making stuff up. Stop saying stuff happened that just clearly, plain as day, did not happen. Sorry, go ahead. So yeah,
No, you're
when
fine.
you saw this in the theater and learned like that's why Luke felt like he failed because he thought about killing his nephew for a split second. How did you feel about that personally? Like, did you feel like that went against how he was written previously, or what?
Yeah, so I think here's where we might differ some. I hate this because I'll just get into it and I'll explain by reading what I wrote down, if that's fine. Like I said, weird character moments. Luke says Snoke had already turned his heart. This is the beginning of what I hate about this because that sentence is not something you would hear from Luke. Snoke had already turned his heart. He never thought that the Emperor had already turned Anakin's heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is execution. I get where they're taking his character. I like you said, he's became a failed Jedi Master, like he never he never wanted to be, but that's what happened. But it's the execution I hate. So in the briefest moment of pure instinct, they use that line as justification, but to me that just isn't good writing because that's not Luke's character. Like I get it. I get that that's what they use to justify what he did, saying that he didn't try to kill his nephew, which is true. He didn't try to kill him, but that is literally what he wanted in that moment because he said in the briefest moment of pure instinct. So in the briefest moment, his pure instinct was to stop that raw power from coming back like Vader. So it's not like he physically tried to kill him, but in his heart, he's saying that he wanted to in that briefest moment. Unless I'm just not reading
Oh
that
yeah,
right.
for like a brief second, he
Yes.
did want to, and
Yeah.
then he felt shame.
Yeah, which is fine, and I'm gonna get there. But it's a reason, I guess, for why he lit his lightsaber in that moment to wait, and it woke up Ben. That's what he wanted in that brief moment. And then, like you said, it passed like a fleeting shadow, and I was left with shame. Honestly, it's a great line. It's a great line of dialogue right there. And characters do change over time, but I feel like the execution for this just is not good. Again, the fear in Luke is understandable. But imagine Obi-Wan wanting to kill Luke so he didn't end up like Anakin. Or at least Obi-Wan wanting to prevent Luke on Tatooine from ever following in the footsteps of the Jedi. But the opposite happened. So there's certain things that I think they're just better left alone. Like, I feel like this could have just been left alone. Like, they didn't need to go this route. Not everything needed to be a subversion of expectations, especially when it didn't serve the story, but you craft the story in a way to serve the subversion of expectations. So that's kind of my rant on this. However, where they go from here is Rey, like you said, having the full context of what happened between Luke and Ben. And Rey's line here is brilliant. You failed him by thinking his choice was made. It wasn't.
Yeah.
That is such a good line. One of the best lines in the movie, honestly. It feels like a line that someone said to Rian Johnson about his decisions that he threw in the movie. Yeah. I literally feel like someone said that to him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna use that."
I feel like maybe it would have been more on brand if like maybe the opposite happened. Like Kylo Ren went on a rampage, and then Luke felt kind of unsure if like maybe he should have like trusted him or whatever. Like, oh, like I sense, he's being tempted by the dark side, but it's no big deal, because I redeemed my father, and then it goes
that would
wrong,
have been
and
so
then
much
like maybe
better.
he's like wondering like if like following the light side is really the right thing because it led to him kind of being naive and failing like the Jedi did, but not corrupting his own moral compass in a way, I guess.
And that is, I think that would have been such a better direction. And I get the end goal, and I don't think it's bad, but I think the execution is just very bad. Like you said, I think if they would have went that route, it would have made so much more sense. And they basically make Rey Luke, and they make Luke Obi-Wan. Yeah. So that's what I think a lot of Star Wars fans have issues with. We've had this. We've seen it. You know what I mean?
So,
So
they're just I have a question for
it.
you. This is like something I've heard speculation about. Do you think that by Luke seeing Kylo Ren's possible future and then trying to take action, that future came to pass because of him? Like, do you think he inadvertently created the monster that he wanted to destroy?
I do, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. I think if he wouldn't have done that, Kylo wouldn't have turned, because I think the line that he says where Snoke had already turned his heart, I think that's a cop-out. I don't think that was the truth. I think that was the hubris of Luke in thinking that. Like, I don't think that was true. Like, if he would have just thought that, like, maybe he could have been like, I thought Snoke had already turned his heart, but I had faith in Anakin. I had faith in my father that he wouldn't turn, and I'm going to choose to have faith in Ben.
Yeah.
I think, like what you said, I think that would have been just better execution of it. Like, the execution is where it's not on brand for Luke. It was on, like you said, it was on brand for Obi-Wan, and he just makes the same mistake. And I'm like, if anyone would have learned from that, it would have been Luke. So why are we retelling this, character progression that we already got in the other movies? I feel like it's just a rehash.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair.
Until this next character gets introduced and kind of saves
and
it
then
all.
I thought you meant like a brand new character. I'm like, what? No, no. I like Luke says to Rey, because she wants to go find Kylo Ren to try and redeem him, and he's like, "This is not good. This is not going to go the way you think." Which it's Luke saying that, but that's also Ryan Johnson saying that to the audience. Like, whatever you think's about to happen, because you've seen the other Star Wars movies. Nope. And I think that's kind of interesting. And then I freaking love this moment. Like Rey, for the last time, tries to give Luke his lightsaber, and he won't take it. And then Rey's like, well, then Kylo Ren is our only hope. Like she gives him one more chance. She's like, okay, well, you can help me out with this and find a better way. No? Well, then I have to do it myself. And it's like, I mean,
Like it's
yeah,
just
I don't think she really had any other, like I've really come to appreciate Rey as a character, and I love how much of a hero she is in this movie. Like she, like almost to a fault. Yeah, that's her whole journey. But
I actually don't have that many
yeah,
problems with Rey as a character.
and then so Luke watches Rey leave, and he's like, "F this shit. I'm gonna go set the tree with the Jedi text on fire." And then who do we see? Jar Jar Binks, baby. Oh no, wait, no, it's Yoda. Sorry, I got confused.
I love this. So if you don't mind, after this part, let's just stop and because it's going to be a long file for me. So what I'll do is because it's going to be a lot, like it's going to be long. Let's split this into two parts. So let's just go through this part, talk about it, and then we'll end it, and we'll come back another time and do the second part.
So
just because it's a lot. So yeah.
So I love how he calls Luke young Skywalker, because he's always been young Skywalker. It's like when you're when you're grown up, and one of your parents is like, even though you're a grown up, you're still my baby. Like in Yoda's eyes, Luke is always his student who he trained on Dagobah. I forget. And then Luke's like, Master Yoda, I'm finally gonna end it. I'm gonna set the tree on fire. This is all toxic. Screw all this shit. I'm done. And then I kind of like this. He has the torch, and he can't bring himself to set the tree on fire.
He can't do it.
He can't do it. I love it. Like Luke in this whole movie is on some massive copium. He says one thing, but his instincts say another. I think that's so interesting.
And like I said, I think a lot of it comes down to the overall story and execution of some of the characters, because there are, like I said at the beginning, there are some moments that I didn't realize how much I love them, like all of this stuff right here. And then there are other moments that I thought I liked that I'm like looking at it now and I'm just like, it's not that good. I really didn't like it. But so it was so fun coming back to this movie. So yeah, I love this part so much. So then
Yoda, he like extends one of his fingers, and lightning comes down and strikes the tree and sets it on fire. And
what?
People had a problem with this. What did Obi-Wan say? Strike me down and I'll become more powerful than you could possibly do. What did you think he was talking about, bro? How can a Force ghost be powerful? I don't know. If a ghost could be powerful, that means what? They can interact with the real world in some way. Otherwise, they're not powerful because they can't do anything to affect anything.
So, I don't think I brought this up in our Return of the Jedi retrospective, but I really want to bring it up now, is the fact that George explained that Force ghosts can do this. He actually had this in the outline for Return of the Jedi, because in Return of the Jedi, there was supposed to be, I believe, I don't think I'm wrong with this, but there was supposed to be a lava planet, which eventually would turn into Mustafar. But before Mustafar, there was this lava planet that the Emperor had a palace on, which later became Vader's castle. But the Emperor had a castle on this lava planet, and in this castle, he had a giant throne, which we end up seeing in the next movie, Rise of Skywalker. They got that idea from the scrapped idea from Return of the Jedi. So hear me out, bro. the Emperor had this whole thing in this lava planet with this throne. Everything was, crazy idea. They couldn't do it because it was such a massive idea. What happened was when Luke showed up to fight the Emperor, who showed up with Luke? The literal Force ghost of Obi-Wan and Yoda. And what would happen is the Force ghost of Obi-Wan and Yoda were going to fight the Emperor with Luke by literally using, Force lightning and all kinds of stuff. 2 reasons they didn't do this. 1, it was very hard to do at that time. And 2, George wanted to really focus on Anakin and Luke's relationship in this and didn't want to sidetrack it by bringing in the Force ghosts. However, Force ghosts can do this. Like, I don't understand why people got so upset with Yoda doing this with the lightning. I thought it was so cool because Luke thinks he's doing something by destroying the tree, but he can't bring himself to it instinctually, like you said. But Yoda proves him wrong by actually just destroying the tree with basically the snap of his fingers, symbolizing that the Jedi Order has officially ended, like that it's done. That's one reason that Luke couldn't bring himself to do it, because he saw himself as the last Jedi. He was the last of, the Order. He had the remaining books. Like it lived if he lived, it died if he died. But Yoda literally proved him wrong by just saying, "No, Rey has everything she needs in her. All of this stuff that you're holding on to really doesn't matter." Bang. One of my favorite things about the entire movie.
Yeah, it's great, but I just want to read this. Okay, so Luke.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have here Luke thinks Yoda wants to kill the Jedi Order, but he really wants to kill Luke's narrow-mindedness.
Yes.
So, I freaking love, he's like, oh, young Skywalker, still looking to the horizon.
Yes.
And then,
yes.
I'm going to get more into this later, but it's like Luke's biggest problem is that he's never totally been unable to focus on what's right here in front of him. He's always thinking about, some like possibility or something happening on far off that I can't do anything about.
Well, that's what caused him to do the thing with Kylo. He was looking at a possible future. And
then, we get that classic line, the greatest teacher failure is, because Luke's like, I can't be what Rey needs me to be. And then Yoda's like, pass on what you've learned, but, failure, yes, failure most of all. Failure most of, because Yoda learned that, because what does he say near the end of Revenge of the Sith when he's about to go into exile? Failed I have. And we get to see, dude, Yoda has a character arc, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yoda, the best character, not the best character in the movie, but he's one of the best characters ever. And like you said, the greatest teacher failure is, to me, best line of the movie. It sums up the movie, and I think it sums up the sequels. If we can take anything away from specifically The Last Jedi, the greatest teacher.
Yeah, and then, dude, I could tell you now, if I ever have kids, I'm gonna rewatch this movie, and when this next line from Yoda comes up, I'm gonna be destroyed.
Like your favorite line. Yeah.
Wait, I thought I was getting choked up. We are what they grow. Fuck. We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters. Dude. Oh my God.
That's his final lesson.
That's his
final lesson.
I love, this is going to come up later when Luke confronts Kylo Ren on Crate. But the idea that Luke's like, oh, he's still kind of arrogant. Even though he's old, because he's like, oh, I'm the last Jedi, I failed, that means, woe is me, I can't, pass on my teachings because of this stuff, I have to, punish myself, I have to, bear this tremendous burden. And then Yoda's like, bro, you're not that important, dude. Obi-Wan and I had to learn we're not that important. People are going to live past us and be better than us. Just accept it, you freaking idiot. Just get over yourself. And that's when, like Luke, I love his arc in this movie. I'll get, because he basically, like all the Jedis, they transcend life itself. Like Luke, this is where, this is he dies at the end of the movie. But like, I think this is where he truly experiences ego death.
Yeah.
Finally, and it's just a like I can't think of a better character to help Luke on these final steps of his journey than Yoda.
It's beautiful, bro, and that's why Yoda does it instead of Anakin.
I think it actually could have been interesting if, like, instead of Yoda, it was Anakin who talks to Luke, and it's like like father and son reunited, and like father teaches his boy a lot. Like, I couldn't be there for you when you were a kid, but I'm gonna be there for you now. But I mean,
So yeah, no, super interesting, and I want to say a few things, and we can go to part 2. So Yoda says we are what they grow beyond, and if you put it into normal, order, they grow beyond what we are. So that's why we must pass on what we know and also our failures, so that they learn and can grow. And like Yoda says, failure most of all. So like we wrote down very similar things. This is the turning point for Luke. It's his final lesson. And Yoda says it's the true burden of all masters. It's beautiful. And this is why, bro, you need to watch Ahsoka. This sentiment is echoed by Anakin in the Ahsoka show to Ahsoka. It is so good. It is literally the same thing that Yoda's teaching Luke. Anakin teaches Ahsoka, which I think it's cool that we see Yoda appear to Luke, because Yoda was Luke's master. And we see Anakin appear to Ahsoka because Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan. It's super cool to see the parallels here. It's awesome,
thought of
dude.
another parallel. Maybe this could be the final.
Yeah.
I literally just thought of it. So in this scene, Luke is showing another way that him and his dad were similar. Because what does Vader say to Obi-Wan when they meet? When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. And Luke, stop being he left the Jedi Order, he left Yoda's teachings and Obi-Wan's teachings, and he became a master, and even now he thought he was, I'm a master, I have so much knowledge. And then Yoda shows up to be like, no, you're still the learner. Let me teach you something, because you clearly haven't learned much.
Dude, it's so crazy, because Ahsoka in season 5 of the Clone Wars leaves the Jedi Order. Anakin begs her to stay, but she leaves the Jedi Order. She becomes an amazing Jedi, in master. It has Padawans and everything, much like Luke. Her and Luke are very similar. And then Anakin shows back up to teach her final lesson, and her final lesson is to learn how to become a true master. And it's so good. They're parallel, very nice, actually. So, last thing I'll say, I actually do not have a problem with how they made Luke in The Last Jedi. I have a lot of problems with the execution, the directing, the writing, and the overall story. I think it's all very weak because it's inconsistent. But this moment with him and Yoda is one of the best in the entire saga, and it feels like Star Wars through and through.
I agree.
So, I love it. I don't want to put a time limit on this, and I definitely don't want to rush through it.
That's definitely the best call.
If this takes us forever to get out, let's just get it all out. You know what I mean?
Most of The Last Jedi. After this, we're going to pick up with Rose, Finn, and DJ on their side quest, and eventually lead into the end of the movie and all that fun stuff. So
it gets packed from here on out.
Stay tuned for part 2. We hope you enjoyed